This is Rob Fnuff from the Countercharge podcast, and you're listening to the Mantic Universe podcast, the only podcast that has the balls to cover all their games.
Mantic Universe podcast, and that does not get easier to say. So welcome to MUP. What's MUP? Yeah, there we go. I'm sure we can get a pun in there somehow.
Probably, but we said no. We said we keep it family friendly, so no dirty jokes.
Hey, no, I've unticked that box. After Rob last month, I had to untick that box. So, yes, welcome to the Mantic Universe podcast. I'm Chris, and as ever, I'm joined by my good friend
Clem. Woo!
Hey, yay! Everyone. There we go. I don't know why I always cheer when that happens. It feels like we're underway when that happens. Cool. So, first, obviously, we're going to go through what's on the menu for today. Give us a run through of the show. Then we're going to go into our introduction. I'm going to give my apologies for last month, which I always have to give because I always make tons of mistakes. And then we go into Mantic News, as always. We're then going to talk about our Warpath, so the Firefight stuff. Then we're going to talk about Deadzone, and inevitably I'm going to get confused between the two. Then we're going to talk about the Magnetar City Deadzone campaign, which wrapped up a little while ago. We're then going to talk about Panathor stuff, so obviously Kings of War, possibly Vanguard, and definitely some Armada. Yes, there we go. And then we're going to talk about our special event of the month, which was our Gaming Day in Berlin, which is all very exciting. And then our topic of the month. And our topic for this month is our tips for getting into Kings of War. And then we'll talk about what we might discuss next month and wrap up with any conclusions. Good.
Sounds good.
Hey there, I'm Brian.
And I'm Rick.
From Deadzone, the podcast.
And you're listening to Mantic Universe Podcast.
For everything Mantic under the sun.
Who would have thought doing a podcast would require so much talking?
Yeah.
So, this month, there's no, after we've had Rob on, it's downhill from here all the way, isn't it? To be honest, we peaked too soon. But this month there's no flashy guests. It's just the two of us as usual. So
I think it's a good thing, right? Like, I think we want to change the format a little bit. Like, not always have guests. Sometimes just you and me, buddy. That's how it is.
Yeah, just back to the classics. Yeah, just do an acoustic set. Yeah, I think that's what it's all about, to be honest. Is just you and me chatting about toy soldiers, and if we can do some exciting stuff from time to time, let's do it. But yeah, you don't want to mess with the classics. So yeah, my apology for last month is I was talking about my friend Dominic and my friend Dominic. So one of my friends is called Dominic, and the other one is Matthias. So when you can't get your friends' names right, you're struggling. But yeah, so anyway, it doesn't really matter to anyone, and I could have gotten away with that. But no, I wanted to just clear that up. So apologies, Matthias. So let's very quickly, before Clem has time to comment on how stupid I am, move on to our third segment, Mantic News. Yay! So, there's been some exciting stuff going on. So it's wrapped up already, but there was the Crazy Bobby sale. So it was sort of up to 50% off some stuff. I thought that was a particularly good deal on the rules, actually. Just like, because we're in the EU, we have to pay 20% tax on top of the high postage fee for stuff from the UK now, thanks Brexit. So I just picked up a couple of digital rule books. I got the Caesar Flame supplement for Armada, and I got the Magnetar supplement for Dreadball. And it's a really, really big book. Actually, I'm not sure how much I'll actually use it, but who knows? Maybe it's in the future. So it's a really cool PDF. And there was also some good deals on some ogres. So if anyone was starting to pick up an ogre army, that was a really good opportunity. But it's finished now, so what are you going to do?
Well, it's nice to follow on those sales. Like I think they usually do it around Thanksgiving, like Black Friday or whatever it is. But it was a pretty interesting selection. I did not get anything because rules, I had most of what I needed already. And ogres, I already have way too many Mantic ogres. But it's always cool to see what they have. Just wanted to mention very quickly, there's also now a big difference, I think, for everyone in the EU. Mantic has finally managed to organize, I don't know how it's called, like the DDP or whatever it is, like, shipping with customs taken care of. And so now, if you order stuff on the Mantic website from the EU, you basically don't run into any issues. Like, it will be much faster because all the procedures are handled, and you don't get additional costs that you don't know what to expect, which was really a big issue, right? Like, sometimes you pay, obviously, VAT on top, sometimes random custom fees, and it's very hard to predict how much it was. Now, shipping costs are slightly higher, if I remember correctly, but at least it's very transparent, and you know exactly what to expect. So I think that's a big news also for everyone in the EU as well.
Yeah, that's massive. Was there an email on that? I didn't hear anything about that.
I think I saw it on Facebook, and then I checked on the website, but it's
Nice.
like a
Great
couple of
news.
weeks ago or something like this. Yeah, it is pretty important.
Fantastic. Oh, that is really good for me personally, yeah.
It's dangerous, you mean?
Fantastic.
You mean dangerous, right?
Yeah, dangerous. That's exactly it. Uh-oh. Fantastic. So that was the sale, which is wrapped up already. So there's been more new... I can't talk. There's been more EOD models, which all look really cool. So hard plastics. There was a picture that's been teased that someone on Facebook, the Kings of War Fanatics group, seemed to think might be hinting at a new starter set. So that's the new Empire of Dust models standing next to the Trident Realm models. And actually, firstly, that would be super cool as a Trident Realms player. But also what's quite interesting is I think in the Empire of Dust army list, there is like an undead Naiad unit.
Right.
Like a sand Naiad or something. And I always thought that was quite a random thing. So maybe that then makes a bit more sense to me then.
Yeah, maybe there's something in the fluff. To be honest, I'm not the best person to discuss fluff.
You're not so fluffy.
It would be interesting to see Trident Realm get some stuff. But do they need new plastics? Not really, do they?
So you think that until you try and build the Mantic Worm Riders. So I
Right.
bought some Mantic Worm Riders and they're metal. When they're finished, they're lovely. I gave up and just 3D printed some Serpent type models and stuck Mantic
Right.
Naiads to them. And I did that for a reason.
Yeah, but so they are converting some metal models to resin, I think, and maybe they could update a few of these. But I mean, it could be an interesting matchup, like Empire of Dust and Trident Realm. Also, on the playstyle, there are two very interesting factions to put against another.
Yeah, definitely.
And we will see a new player box, a new starter set. I mean, for Kings of War, obviously at some point. But I don't know. I think we can start taking bets on which factions will be in there. Not 100% sold on Empire of Dust and Trident Realm. I mean, Empire of Dust, yes, makes sense because they get a new range now. But would they be facing Trident Realm? Maybe elves? Who knows, right? Like they also have some elf models from the League of Infamy game.
Yeah, what do you think of them, Clem? The elves in there.
So the new elves in League of Infamy, they are pretty nice. I'm not exactly an elf person, and the only elves that interest me are the bad elves. So
Naughty elves.
Naughty elves, exactly. So I'm kind of biased against them, but from a purely technical perspective, like how good the models are, I think they're just great. And having hard plastic for those would be pretty cool as well.
I thought it was pretty shocking that it took Mantic so long to get Drakon Rider models when they seemed to be one of the most popular units in the game, and Mantic weren't making models for them. I always thought that was a real shame. They've obviously gone down the route of, coming up with something that nests within the existing elf style of the really, really old elf models. Personally, I probably would have preferred if they just went, well, that's 10 years old, let's just do something new and something that really fits within 3rd edition, because I think they're really trying to do something, I don't want to say unique, but I think if you look at the newer Kings of War armies that have come out, I think there's definitely an aesthetic quality there. It reminds me of Warcraft 3 that I really enjoy.
Right.
And I'm not sure those elf models, I think they're perfectly fine, but I'm not sure they really speak to that theme. They're
Fair
okay,
enough.
you know.
Yeah, they're maybe a bit generic elves, which I think is not necessarily a bad thing if it's done well, and it is done well, in my opinion. So, I don't know, I'm curious to see what they will do for the hard plastic for elves. That will definitely come at some point, right? It is on the menu, I'm sure, somewhere down the line. So yeah, I'm curious to see what they do with it, and also could be exciting if they manage to do a kit that can also do maybe naughty elves at the same time. Who knows? Maybe they can manage to do something smart this way. So yeah, let's see. That's pretty.
That would be really cool. Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, fantastic. And then just moving on to news. So Maison Labs have found their way into their own booster boxes. Previously, I think you had to buy Star Saga, the board game,
right,
and then augment that with a few GCPS or Plague units. So I think that's really cool. I think one of the issues Mantic have had is particularly with their website, it's not always been clear what you actually need to buy or what your options are. So if you remember a little while ago, if you're actually looking on the website, it's really not, unless you really know what you're doing, it's really not clear. You couldn't just go into, let's say, Maison Labs, and it would list all of the models you could buy for Maison Labs. Or even, for example, things were split between Kings of War and Vanguard. So you'd have to go between the two. So if you didn't really know what you were doing, it was very confusing. Right. So I really think that's a big deal. You know, if you're trying to get new players in, I really, or, you know, if you're buying a present for somebody or something like this, I really think it's a big deal that they're making that as pain-free and obvious as possible. I think one of the kind of random ideas I had was that, and I don't know how easy this is. In fact, it probably isn't very easy, but one of the ideas I had was with the actual Mantic army builder, you build your army, let's say you build a 2,000 points Kings of War army as an example. I think it would be fantastic if there was a button that takes you straight to the store and it automatically adds in all the models that are in your army list into your bucket, you know, into your basket for you. I know there are going to be some complications there because it's not always one unit is one box. Yeah. So it's not that simple, but I think that would be super cool.
It would be an interesting feature. I think, as you just said, one main blocker is that some units you just can't buy separately from the bigger boxes. But I think for Deadzone and Firefight potentially as well, but Deadzone in particular, this might be easier to do because then you can most likely get away with a faction starter and a booster and maybe a couple of special boxes on top of it, and that could be a good way to start. However,
fantastic.
I have the impression that we'll discuss it probably later also with the topic of the month, but the main blocker is more people will find a mega army box that they like or a faction starter that they like because it just looks cool, right? And they buy this, and then they need to make a list with it. Or, okay, now that I've bought the faction starter, what's my second purchase? Or, okay, I bought the starter and the booster. What else do I buy right after that to get to a full standard size army list? So, I don't know. I mean, both options are always great. I mean, they've already made some progress for the website. They've experimented with the 360 pictures for two models.
Isn't it amazing they implemented your idea almost immediately, Clem? Incredible.
Yeah, I'm the only person ever to have said that, and I'm getting royalties for the idea, obviously.
Yeah, of course you are. Yeah, this is why they pay you the big bucks.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it's the Kraken and I think a couple of other models, right? So only about 6 models for now or something like this, but it's great they're moving in that direction. They've proved they can do the technology.
Right. So I've seen the Kraken and the big Australian guy, like the Spectra or something.
Spectra, yeah.
Remember, it's, by the way, it's a funny model because I don't know who posted on Fanatics, I think. Like, hey, I didn't realize how large this model actually is. I was like,
100%.
what do you mean?
100%.
And then you see a normal sized model next to it, and it's like, oh my god, it's huge. And when you see the picture, it's like, oh, well, okay, it's a hero, right? You know, like it's a standard size model. It's actually pretty large. So again, don't have the pictures to show it, then people don't realize it. So anyway,
I think on the box they have like a model comparison or something. Mantic were trying to show it in some way.
Right.
I bought two of them, and and I think they were about, when I bought them, about €35 each or something. I was shocked how big and cool they are, and they're super, super cool, super dynamic. And as you say, they are, like a, not far off a giant kind of thing. No, that's an exaggeration, but they're big. They're really big chunk of resin, and hopefully now with this kind of technology, with the 360 views, Mantic are positioning themselves, in a better light, and their stuff in a better light. So
yeah.
I think that's really fantastic. And
I mean,
particularly, sorry.
No, sorry. I'm interrupting you. That's the first, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, and just go back to when the competition are just so good at advertising their stuff and showing off their stuff. It's really nice to see Mantic making improvements in that regard.
Yes, I agree. I think another element that I've noticed is they've improved their game on the box art. Like if you look at the Firefight strike forces, right? Like the starter army, basically. I think the pictures that come on those boxes and on the website are actually pretty good. I like they really show how good those models actually are, and how much stuff is in there. And I think those are a huge improvement compared to previous boxes. I really like what they've done for those releases. So yeah.
It always felt to me with the second edition Deadzone stuff that Mantic were almost desperate for you to buy it. Like, please buy our stuff. Whereas now the quality is kind of speaking for itself a bit more.
Yeah, and funny enough, like some models didn't even change, right? Like it's just how you present them and reworking the rules that go along with those models, and I think that makes a big difference. But
100%. Fantastic. So I think that's pretty much it for the news, Clem, unless you've got anything else you want to add.
I don't remember. Wasn't there some Armada releases? No, that was last month already, right? Like the
Varangar. They're still advertised, but yeah, the Varangar, we mentioned it last month.
Right, that was last month. Yeah, and otherwise for Firefight as well. There's I'm waiting for my corruption, like the big dude, big model.
Is that the one holding the massive pipe?
Maybe. It's like a big monster, big scary monster. And when you look at the model and you look at the profile, you're like, yep, I'm definitely taking one in my list. So I think it released early July, but it's still not in stock at my local store. So that's next on the menu for me.
Fantastic. Cool. In that case, we'll move on to our Warpath Firefight. So, Clem, what do we have this month to say about Firefight?
What did I do this month? I assembled a bunch of Plague and primed them. And I also started to think about GCPS lists. Because initially I thought my second army would be Marauders. And somehow, somewhere along the way, kind of changed my mind a little bit. I'll go to Marauder probably as number 3, but I want to do GCPS next because I think the aesthetic will be pretty cool. Having the Plague and the GCPS fight it out. Especially if I want to use both of my armies, like to lend one of them to a friend and do demo games or stuff like this. I think it would look much better to have Plague and GCPS facing off. It's also not exactly the type of list that I would usually play, like a shooty, volume of fire type of list with GCPS. So that's an interesting thing to consider. But yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think we both love the idea of, because obviously the plague models, they're kind of corrupted GCPS. So I think we both love the idea of, like a horde of troopers and a horde of plague going up against each other. That's just super exciting.
Yeah, for me, it's like from my limited understanding of what the whole universe is about, like the whole Warpath universe is about. This is kind of the poster child face-off, right? Like the GCPS trying to contain an infection, and the plague, like basically the rest of their own squad trying to get back to them and eat them alive or like infect them. I think it makes for a cool army face-off. Absolutely.
And as well, in terms of play style, I mean, I know with GCPS and Plague, actually, you can go down lots of different routes, but I love the idea of, horde of zombies and a horde of cheap guys with laser rifles.
Yeah, no, that sounds super cool, super interesting. So, yep, that's definitely next on the list.
Fantastic. And I had my second ever game of Firefight, Clem. You'll be shocked to hear.
I've heard a little bit about it. Yeah. So you had your first game. So wait, that was before the last pod already?
Oh, right, yeah. So I had my first game. So I've now played 2 games of Firefight. The first one was up somewhere in the beautiful countryside outside Cologne. And yeah, we had a barbecue and beautiful views over the river valley. And I got completely destroyed by the plague. So my Forge Fathers, we rocked up. There was some smoke fired out by some mortars. We couldn't see very much, and then some zombies and horrible monsters came out of the smoke. There was, I think, to start with, Manuel, he put two or three of the leaper guys into a mule and just ran it straight at me.
Right.
He then charged around my Iron Ancestor with the leapers. It was a hindered charge, but anyway, it was legal. And the leapers completely whiffed their attacks, and I think they killed one of the Master Artificer's, his retinue, his lackeys, his meat shield. So that actually went pretty terribly for him, and I could use my rockers on Valkyries, like the motorcycles, to just shoot into them and kill the leapers. And then my Iron Ancestor just blew up the mule, pretty much one-shotted it. So turn 1 actually went quite well for me, but then the zombies emerged out of the smoke. I think by the end of the game, most of the undead, zombie plague were dead, but I hadn't at all been able to get on any of the objectives. They just kept me completely pinned back. I tried to send out a few Brockers to go and secure some points, but just anything I sent out just got killed by an aberration. Aberration? Yeah, there we go. I think I might have got that right for the first time ever. So it was a pretty rough ride. I did have my APC. I did try and move up the table, but it was just, it was a very one-sided game. If it went to kill points, I think I still lost, but it was sort of okay. But because, of course, that didn't matter. It was just victory points. It was a real, really one-sided fight. And then, Clem, I came up to Berlin last weekend.
Right. And played
what happened?
Against Plague again. Well, you kind of murdered
we
my
played
Plague.
1,000 points.
Right.
And I don't think we're going to remember the name of the scenario, but it was the one with the kind of H configuration
for the objective markers,
points.
yes, to score. So you score 1 VP in your area, 2 VPs in the center, and 4 VPs in your opponent's deployment area. So in the end, a pretty dynamic scenario, and also you score at the end of each round, which I think is pretty interesting because it really keeps things super dynamic and really pushes you to just go and get it. Like, it rewards different playstyles as well, and so I think that's really interesting.
And you don't get no VPs for kill points. It was just purely on objectives, which I really like, actually.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's a pretty interesting scenario. I think we rolled at random for it, but Oh, I think we rolled at random, didn't like it, and then you wanted to use your super cool objective markers.
Yeah, so I'd spent about €35 on these little objective mats, so you can see exactly. So there's like a 40mm circle in the middle, which is perfect for obviously for this game, and then there's 3 inches around that in all directions to. So it's perfect to know who's scoring what point at any given time.
It is, yeah.
So I insisted we use those.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I mean, it's pretty cool to have them for the game. But yeah, I mean, I think you really had a battle plan for this game, and I did not really, or not so much at least. I think I also underestimated the broker. Like, they are really scary when you manage to really put them where they need to be with the proper boost from the commanders and so on. They really they destroyed everything they touched, basically.
They murdered their way up the table, didn't they? All the way into your back line.
Right, absolutely.
But then by that point they were pretty bloodied and bruised, and I think that was one of the crucial decisions, is they charged a mortar, but by that point I think there were only about half of them left, weren't there? I think crucially there was half of them.
Yeah, less than half, I think.
Less than half, yeah. So they were taking a nerve check. They were unsupported, they weren't inspired. They didn't quite manage to kill the mortar.
I think, yeah, that's one thing that happened, like, when I thought more about the game. By the end of turn 3 or something, like, you were clearly ahead because you had a good chance to score on my 4 VP objective, and you were defending your own 4 VP objective quite well. In the center, it was kind of 50-50 also. And I think what happened is that you pushed your luck a little bit too much. Like, instead of saying, okay, I am 4 points ahead, it's turn 3, like it's turn 4 now, I just need to murder that one unit there and just cruise till the end of the game and it'll be done. I think you pushed it a little bit more, trying to really get a complete victory, and unfortunately then you just got enough wounds here and there to lose the unit that was actually scoring, and then the situation kind of turned around. But yeah, by the end of turn 3 I think you were clearly on your way to win this game.
And I think, yes, but it was interesting how quickly it all went horribly wrong for me. Stuff really does die quick if you don't look after it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think we went from a situation where you only had 2 units left that could score, so you could only ever score two victory points per round. And then I killed the Teraton, so you were only down to 1 unit.
No, I had 3 units. I had 3 scoring units.
Oh, you had 3. Okay.
And you killed the Teraton, and it was only 2. But I think...
Ah, right.
Yeah, I think it's... I'm not too sure. I think also at some point the dice turned around in my favor a little bit. Like, it's always... it helps, definitely, at some point.
The poison smoke on my... If you remember, the poison smoke from the mortar on my Master Artificer, who was on a scoring point.
Right.
I think...
That's also one thing. Yeah, it was in your back line, so... Not entirely huge, but for sure, like, the D4 damage can be brutal, right? Like, you can completely erase a unit that already has some damage.
Exactly. So they took 4 wounds. So it was one of my big leaders, 4 wounds, and then he fluffed the runaway roll twice, because obviously he's self-inspiring. But it was... yeah, so it was really a game of 2 halves, as they say. But it was a very enjoyable game. Very, very, very fun. Had a great time.
Also a pretty cool... Yeah, it was super nice. I also liked it. Also a nice table. Like, we used some terrain that a guy from the Berlin Gaming Group brought for the day. Because it wasn't in a gaming shop, so... It's basically at my workplace. We can get this.
Oh, we'll come to this later, buddy. We've got a whole section for this. But there's loads of overlap.
No, but so I think it was also an enjoyable game because most of the minis were painted. I think we both had everything painted, actually.
Oh, yeah.
The one game I played before, I did not have everything painted because I lent some model for Deadzone. But anyway, so still a super super nice. I think there's still some room to, let's say, grow and understand a bit better how to really properly use your army. I mean, for me, at least for the Plague, every game I realize some small detail. Oops, that does not work like this, or oh, I thought those guys could manage this and they actually cannot, or hey, this is slightly better than I thought. So obviously there's some experience. Like I don't think we can claim being experts yet with 2 games.
I think that's fair to say. Yeah. And the I mean, for example, my Iron Warriors, they're loads of points, but a big unit of 10 of them, particularly with the using command points on them, they are horrible, aren't they? They just murder. I think they just wiped out a huge unit of zombies, didn't they?
Ghouls. Yeah, ghouls. Yeah,
ghouls. Yeah, whole unit of ghouls. Yeah. Well, the first game, I just didn't have the tools I needed to fight the Plague.
Right.
And when I was activating models, it was sort of like, oh God, what am I supposed to do with this now? What am I supposed to do with this? So I did have a little think about it, and it was kind of in 2 ways I think I needed to change it. One is just have a couple of really powerful units. So instead of having units of 5 Brockers, I had a unit of 10 Brockers with the little robot thing, the minor robot thing, because that's so useful, having that extra AP. And just having that murder its way across the table is huge. And then just having one big unit of infantry who really can take a unit off if you need to. That was huge. So it's a huge point sink, but it really, really can make a difference. And then just having those, if you remember, I think they're called the Inferno Drill laser. They're like a mining laser thing. Yes. I just had one of them. But it's only about 70 points, and that was really nasty for you. I nearly one-shotted a aberration, and you were basically forced into charging that, weren't you? Because you didn't want that to shoot you again.
With enough range, it is quite scary for my list. Like I need to do something about it, and I don't really have good options. So yeah, it is a good thing. Also, one of your commanders gives like double the dice or something like this, right? Like,
it's
weight of fire.
I think it's Farangir overcomes. Yeah, so it's two points, and it doubles shots for the rifles or pistols.
That one was also pretty strong because you don't really expect, or at least I didn't expect the unit to have that volume of attacks, and that does make a difference, right? Like, because volume of attacks is not really a thing in Firefight. Like when you think about it, you don't really kill stuff all the time. Like no one will be tabled by the end of turn 2. It never ever happens, right? It's just impossible. And so when you see a unit that can very comfortably destroy almost anything it touches or shoots at, that's like, oh, that's quite something, right? Like it requires a bit of a combo, like some command dice spent on it, but it is pretty strong.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think as well that I haven't used it at all, but one of the other command abilities gives something like Frenzy 2 or something like that. And I think it can be boosted, and I'm going off my very dodgy memory. But there is, I think, one I could have been spending on the Brockers to kind of boost their attacks and its points in the game. I think that would have been really big too. Yeah. So, for example, when I really needed to kill the mortar, it was only the mortar, but I could have, buffed my dice a little bit and probably killed it had I thought to do so. So there's definitely room for improvement, not just with me playing better, but just, remembering stuff, right?
I think it's, you really have to learn about it. Like, I mean, also the mistake of not having my commanders placed properly because you're like, oh, inspiring exists, but is it that important? And then you realize, well, actually it does make a big difference. And also you need to be in range to use command abilities as well.
100%.
So,
and I'm not sure if we mentioned it. We only played 1,000 points game, but it feels good. At 1,000 points, I really, really liked it. Yes, you have to make difficult decisions on what you actually bring, but actually, I quite enjoy doing that. I think that's fun. You can't bring all the toys. but it was quite late in the day on the Saturday we played, so I think by that point we were both a little bit frazzled anyway.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I have 11 units in my 1,000-point list, right? And I think you have something very similar, like 10 or 11 units as well.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it from the big picture, if you increase the amount of points, most likely you'll buy maybe more expensive things, or like maybe instead of taking only 5 guys, you take 10 guys. But already with 1,000 points, you do have a pretty decent army, and it's an interesting thing to play. And it works perfectly on a 4x4, by the way, which I think is also...
It did. No, I thought it worked really nicely on 4x4, that it felt big enough. Like, it didn't feel like things were cluttered, and, there was genuinely interesting tactical decisions with moving around, which is what I always find the most interesting thing in these games, to be quite honest. And Clem, the other question I was going to ask is, at 1,000 points, how many commanders do you think you should take? 1 or 2?
I think at least 2, because from the now 4 games I played, is that right? 3 or 4 games, so that's really nothing. Every single time you see inspiring makes a big difference when you need it. And also it depends on the commanders, right? But most of them, they will really make a big difference with their auras or the special ability that you can trigger. And by bringing you more power dice, or like command dice, I never remember how they're called in Firefight. I think it's command dice. Because, at least for me, but I think it's the same for everyone, but as a melee-oriented army with the Plague, you really want to get first turn, like turn 2 and or 3, when it's the core of the battle, and you want to make the deciding charge and like annihilate one threat before you get shot down to pieces. And to do this, you need to spend power to, double activate once more than your opponents if you have the same number of drops.
That felt crucial at times, actually, Clem. I thought you did that really cleverly, just going first. And did you notice, actually, at one point, I did late in turn, I think it was probably turn 3, but anyway, never mind. I actually double activated to guarantee me the first round next go to stop you from doing that again. It's so powerful the turn before. Yeah.
I think it really makes a big difference. And many of my great memories with Vanguard really come from the power dice mechanic, because there is really a longer term, like at the round level, a longer term strategy of, it's not just where you guys go and what kind of fights they can do. It's also how do you manage your resource, and it's not just like, okay, I build my army and I know I will have 10 power, or have that many command points and I can use those stratagems, and I build my combo, and it's kind of predictable in a way. No, because it's the command dice, you never know, will I get a good round or a bad round in terms of how much power I have. Every turn you kind of have to adjust depending on this. And so I think it really keeps the game super interesting and gives tons of options. So yeah, I think it's really, really nice.
There were a couple of moments where I really did think you swung the game in your favour by just being smart with your dice. And I think that's super interesting, because it was a really, really close fight. But there were just a couple of smart decisions you made that I thought just tipped the balance ever so slightly, but significantly in your favour. And as we were playing, I thought, oh, this is this is a great game, and this is a lot of fun.
I think you're absolutely right. Like, you really need to have this kind of understanding of what's going on, and where to spend your power. Maybe anticipate a bit on your movements. Like, for next turn, if you think, okay, I still have both of my commanders, or like all of my command dice. So next round, if I have at least 6 power, then I can do this, and this, and still activate first the round after. Or I don't want to activate first, like I give up on this, but instead I will boost my actions and then try to make more damage. So there is really a lot of interesting decisions that you need to make, and it goes further than just where do I move my guys and do I roll my dice properly when I try to kill my enemies. And I think that really makes for an interesting game.
100%. And is there anything in your list you would change, Clem, for next time?
I'm not too sure.
I would say, as the opponent, I would say it seems well balanced.
I think
You've only got 1,000 points, but I think
Yeah.
you've got a decent amount of ghouls, you've got a decent amount of zombies, you've got a few of the really big scary things. So it seems like a balanced list to me.
I think it works sort of well for what it's trying to do, and it's really oriented toward melee, right? Like the ghouls are equipped with the flamer, and there are tens of them, and the dog, so they really need to get to close range for the flamer to work, and then actually get into a fight. And the aberration and the teraton, the two aberrations and teraton also, they really can punch faces wherever they go. I think the list kind of struggles at long range because I just have no shooting, nothing to do with it. And also I played another game against Marauders, and he had the big flyer. Just had nothing.
I was just going to say, if they've got a flyer, is there anything you can even do about it?
No, I mean, you just ignore it.
Just ignore it, yeah.
Just ignore it. I mean,
play the objective, ignore it. Kill everything else.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, do you want to just quickly run us through? Because obviously you played a game against Marauders before we played Firefight. Do you want to just run us? Oh, sorry. And before we move on to that, So I think in terms of my list, I really, really don't want to do it, but I think probably I would drop the Master Artificer because his ability doesn't really help my list particularly. I mean, he could repair the APC for 2 VPs, but I've only got black command dice, right, which are the least powerful. So I don't have command points to burn. I think I rolled really luckily, though. I rolled super consistently throughout.
Yes.
I didn't have one roll that was bad. So I was, I think I can't take that for granted, right? That was lucky rolling.
Yes.
So I don't see it as a useful thing to be able to heal the tank for 2 command points.
I agree.
So
yes.
so I probably would take either another Brocker or, to be honest, I'll probably have a look at the other types of leaders. I love the model of the Master Artificer. That's the only thing, but
it's true that there's not so much he brings to your list in a way. So
yeah. He's
maybe.
not super expensive, but he doesn't synergize with the rest of the list. I mean, the Brockers, I think it's called Scrap Heap Challenge, which is a reference to a 1990s UK TV show called Scrap Heap Challenge, where that was super cool though. So that was it was like eccentric engineers like you, Clem, who would build a tank in their shed, you know.
Uh-huh.
And then and then they would drive the tank around or something. It was nerds build stuff. It was cool. Anyway, rambling.
Like it.
Yeah, you'd love it. Probably drop him, even though the model is super, super, super cool.
I mean, 1,000 points, you need to make decisions. That's for sure. And it's true of everything in your list. That guy could probably go and be replaced by something else. I'm not sure exactly what you need. But it's worth thinking about. Worth thinking about it a little bit.
Yeah, and if I just need someone for inspiring, I'm better off with another Brocker Chief because obviously he can do his Scrap Heap Challenge. And if you remember, that allowed the Brockers to really go. So if they were running a really long way. I forget how far it was now.
I think it's plus 6 or something.
Yeah, something a long way. So it lets them just really run up the table.
It does make a big difference.
But it was super cool in the game when I think 5 of my Brockers were in a building in the middle of the map.
Right.
and the aberration was just sort of smashing into it and just and they hung in there. I think they survived a couple of attacks. I mean, obviously they were eaten in the end, but they hung in there a little bit, didn't they?
They survived for a while. Yes. I was hoping to eat them alive slightly sooner, but yeah. I mean, the aberration are just crazy good. They are not cheap. I think they're 90 points or something.
They're not cheap. Nothing in the list is cheap, though. That's the challenge. Yeah, not many command points.
But still, I mean,
and everything's expensive.
90 points, they really do a lot of damage. But yeah, it's interesting. It's a cool build, and I think the Forge Fathers, they also have tons of options, right? Like you could build a list with a different angle, so maybe that's also something you can play around with. Like I know you love your brokers. So I think you'll stick with them for a while.
But I've got love enough. You know me, Clem. I've still got a load of other models.
Right.
Yeah. I love the style of the Brockers. But you can even with the Forge Fathers, you think dwarves are slow, and they mostly are. But they do have fast units too, so that it's a flexible army. But you can't get away from the fact that all of their units, I think, are good. Maybe not great. I mean, we've only played 2 games, so take this with a pinch of salt. But you don't. They're not a trash army, right? You need to make sure 90 points for a squad of 5 guys with pistols and little hammers. You need to use them smartly and maximize their potential. Otherwise, I think you're going to struggle.
Yeah, there's no chaff. I mean, your Valkyries or whatever the bags are.
They weren't meant to be chaff. You just killed them.
Yeah. What can I say? They look tasty.
Terrifying.
So.
What was the special rule? Is it terrifying?
Yes, terrifying. Yes.
That was flipping horrible. Yeah, that was horrible. Yeah, that was oof. But it's so thematic, and I love that about the Plague. Is the rules just completely fit. And it just plays exactly how I expect it to. It's really great. But the ghouls are really nasty in combat as well. I think they've got 2 dice.
Yes.
They're shooting guys.
Yeah. You'd think, those ones are the shooting guys. They have guns. It's like, nope, wait till they make it to combat. And they can fight in melee quite well as well. So I don't remember, they're not super cheap. But no, they're interesting unit as well. Yeah. I like Plague. That's what can I say? I think they fit my play style as well. So that's
the nice. More I see of them, the more I like them. To be honest, yeah. And actually, I mean, they're not new. I mean, I know there are a few new models, but I think everything you rocked on Saturday, that was all 2nd edition.
Yeah, I only have the old stuff. Yes. So the aberrations, I think, didn't change. Then the Plague Lord, so basically the big nasty guy, there is a new model for it, but I have the old model for now. The Leapers also, they made a new model that is pretty cool, but I have the old models as well. From the Mega Force and I think I have a Mega Force and a couple of starter armies or something like this. So yeah, I think there are newer models that look even better, and like it's resin and not rustic, so that's also valuable. But the old ones, I think, still look pretty good.
I think they look really good, and as I said, the way you've painted them as well.
Yeah,
I honestly, it was just a joy to play against those guys. I was really impressed. I love the way the ghouls look.
Yeah, I think they are interesting models. I was a bit scared initially because there's a lot of details in a way, like pouches and like a torn uniform and so on and belts, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna spend 3 hours per model and never finish. Or I need to find a way to make it much more efficiently, and then I will manage to go through the army. And in the end, I have 4 or 5 contrast colors on top of white zenithal over black primer, And it's very quick and easy to make, and it looks fine. I am happy with the result of this army.
And just in case anyone's listening that doesn't know what that is, so basically you prime your models black, so grey plastic, you prime the black with your airbrush, and then effectively what you're doing is you're holding your airbrush high above the model as if it was the sun, or a light source above the model, and you're just giving them a little squirt of a lighter colour.
Yes.
So that when you go to let that dry, and then when you go to paint the model, if you let's say you use contrast paints, that'll if you just paint it as you would normally, it'll give the impression that the top of the model is lighter than the dark recesses, which don't have the xenophil prime on them.
Yeah, the trick is
a good explanation.
Because, yeah, absolutely. The trick is contrast paints are kind of translucid, and so
they're almost like a gel, aren't they?
Yeah, it's just they're not opaque paints. I don't know what the technical aspect of it creates this effect, but I think they're technically glaze or inks, or closer to glazes or inks, and so you basically keep the luminosity information from the initial step. That is pretty easy to do for like 60 models at a time. Like in one evening you can do all your models and that's it, and then you basically just have to add color to it without doing several layers to do highlights or like edge highlights and crazy things like this, which for a mass army is just perfect. Sometimes I would also start with a dry brush, so I do like you said, so prime black, then from above with a white primer, then let it dry, and then I would sometimes go back with a white dry brush, depending on how much white I added with the airbrush, because you don't want the model to be too dark, right? So you might want to adjust when it's still black and white. Make sure that you have definitions on every area that you want painted. Some people also add like a black, like non-oil, to redefine some darker areas if you've done too much white. So you can really do a lot on the initial stage of luminosity, and then just add the color just once, and it's done.
Interesting. That's a good tip. And the dry brushing of white, that's just to do, so you're kind of doing the opposite of what you'd be doing with the non-oil, right? It's just picking out and highlighting any areas that you might have missed with the airbrush.
Once the model is dry, like after priming it black and doing the white from above, once that is dry, I look at it and try to think, is there at least some white on every area sort of the model? Or because sometimes, if I'm a bit careless, like, I'm not a good painter either, so I just want to get through the models and have them ready for the next battle. So sometimes I would forget some areas or not do enough of the white, and then because the contrast colors are transparent, they're not opaque. If you apply this on top of black, you see nothing, right? Or it's very, very dim. And so that's why I ended up sometimes adding a tiny bit of dry brushing white, just to make sure that the later stage with contrast will actually show something, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah, definitely. And I think it's a really interesting tip, where we're sort of like, it's a really good tip. So people can improve their process rather than just getting better at painting, right? Which is not something you can just decide to do overnight.
I mean,
it can improve your process.
I'm not even sure what the difference between the two is, right? Like, I think getting some practice and finding techniques that you like and that you can get stuff done with, I think that is for me getting better at painting. Because what is my objective when I paint? Well, first to get a relaxing evening, right, away from a computer screen and listening to a nice podcast or something like that, and then maybe get painted models that I can use for games. And so
let's break the fourth wall and hello, dear listener. If you are painting a model while listening to this,
yes,
thank you.
Thanks. But yeah, so I think it is that is how at least try to get better is like refining those techniques and finding what works for me and what makes me happy when I paint my models. Yeah.
I think these are excellent tips because they're things people can just implement and, improve. It's not just, watching a master painter and go, well, just keep trying for the next 20 years and see how you go.
Yeah, it doesn't take too much agility with your hands or anything, right? Like, I'm pretty sure I can do a workshop with complete beginners, like people who have never painted a single model in their lives, and have them go through all those steps and just do them pretty much as well as I would do them and get a similar result, which isn't perfect. Like, it's not box art level painted models, but it is pretty well painted models and more than enough for a game. So I think that's it means it works. It does the job. So,
and crucially, it means people are getting stuff done, which is, I think, something particularly new people will struggle with: procrastination and worrying. It's got to be as good as the box or something.
Yeah.
Whereas in reality,
absolutely. I mean, that's what might have sold you the models to begin with, right? Like, you look at the box and you think, oh, those look awesome. And then you open the box and you see, oops, those are much smaller than I thought. Or, oops, now I have to paint them. They will never ever look as good as on the box. Well, sure, they won't. But they can still look really nice and be used in games. And I think that's the important part to keep in mind. And so, yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned something there about just doing a tutorial. And you mentioned it very flippantly, but I think there's something there, to be honest, because just demoing how people can use an airbrush, and actually over the weekend, just so happens your airbrush, you'd cleaned it and you'd left it out with the little cleaning tool thing, which is like a little knife, and I've got one of those, and I really wasn't sure how I was supposed to be using it because obviously you don't want to be rubbing it against the airbrush. So I was quite nervous to use that. So I literally just said, Clem, what am I supposed to do with this little knife thing? And you explained it to me really, really well. Just little tips like this are just so useful.
I also have no idea what I'm doing with the airbrush, just so that we're clear. I just found a few things that kind of work for me, but there's a lot more that I can learn. But yeah, the other thing about like demoing paint stuff, I think that's an important part of the hobby as well. And I've thought about this in the past few weeks. Like, we always focus on, okay, let's do demo days, or demo games, right? But I think demo hobby evenings or demo hobby sessions is also a thing that we probably should do. And I know some people do that,
exactly right.
like a hobby hangout or like club evening painting and so on. But to get back to the discussion we've had last time, that I'm done trying to convince people who play 40k to switch to Firefight. If I go and chat with complete newcomers to the hobby, at some point they need to have someone help them get started with painting. Otherwise, it's a daunting task and you don't know where to start. Whereas if I spend one evening with them, I'm pretty sure I can help them paint a full Deadzone team in one evening, right? Like, if it's already primed. Like, one evening you assemble the models, you prime them, and then another evening you paint maybe a couple of them, and then you apply to all of it, to the rest of it, or something like this. I'm sure there's also something that we as kind of hobby enthusiasts and evangelists we probably should set up to bring in more people.
I think you're completely right, buddy, because, we've been talking about this recently. As you say, we're sort of like, maybe we give up on trying to convince people that don't want to be convinced, the 40k people. That's fair enough, So, but then we've been talking about, getting new people in. But of course, a massive impediment to that is we've been assuming these new people have the huge amount of knowledge that they just wouldn't have, right?
Yeah.
So you just spending a few hours of your time, I think not only does it help them get it done and obviously make them feel a lot sort of closer and more involved, but you're kind of breaking the curse, breaking this sort of, this it's a new thing. Maybe it's a bit scary for new people.
Yeah, absolutely is. Yeah, and also I remember tons of things that I learned the hard way. If I had someone sit next to me and show me, hey, instead of struggling to do this, like look at how I'm doing it, and maybe you take some good ideas from it. Maybe you don't like some aspect of it, so you just take one part as an inspiration, but at least you're not on your own. And I think that also makes it a much more enjoyable experience. So yeah, I think that's an important side of the trying to create a community or having people get more involved with the games.
So we've gone completely off topic, but it doesn't
Absolutely.
matter. I think Clem, that's an incredibly important point, and that's I personally I think that's really, really important. So in conclusion, then,
Yeah.
oh yeah, and I was going to make a joke about how, one enforcer is one can of spray primer.
What?
One model per can. That makes sense. When you're starting out, like, how do you work that out? Like, yeah,
Yeah. No,
give it
that's
a whole can. It's probably enough.
yes.
So, in conclusion, Clem has an amazing idea there, and I know he's not completely invented that himself, but I think that's really important. And we had a great time playing Firefight.
Yes, and I might play very soon again. Maybe this weekend again. Well, I'll see if I manage to fit that game in. And yeah, do you already have plans to play Firefight again, or not? Not yet. Not
I
sure.
will. I definitely will. I was sure we were going to enjoy it. I was absolutely certain we were. But even I was surprised just how much I enjoyed that and how much I've found myself thinking about the game after we had it, which usually is a sign of a good game to me.
Right. That's a good
Yeah,
point.
I've really enjoyed it. But I'll definitely be playing soon. Yeah, definitely playing soon. And Clem mentioned the beautiful terrain. I'm not going to get this right. There's a shout out at the end, I think. But yeah, after we saw this terrain, I was thinking, ooh, I would also like this terrain. It's this kind of like beautiful sci-fi desert terrain. Really, really wonderful.
Yeah, like post-apocalyptic stuff, so to speak, right? I think it's a Gamemat, Gamemat.eu.
Gamemat.eu. Yeah, exactly.
And they
Yeah, you're
sell
exactly
these
right.
pre-painted resin terrain sets that are, I think, pretty cheap for what they are, right? Like it's 130 or something, the guy said. I don't remember.
Yeah,
And you get
so
a
it was
full table,
I think with
right?
shipping it was 140 something.
Right.
I think it was €12 with shipping. So it's coming from Poland. When I saw it, my brain immediately said, "I need that." Then I managed to resist that, but it wasn't until I picked it up, and I can't even remember why I picked it up. And I went, "Oh my god, that's heavy. What is that? It can't be resin." And the guy was like, "Yeah, no, that's resin." And
Yeah.
then it's pre-painted for that money as well.
Yeah, and I think it really works super well. And sure, you can make
And it looks
better.
stunning, absolutely
yeah.
stunning. Yeah,
You can make more custom terrain and everything, but here for a very reasonable price, you just get almost a full table, right? You just need a few scattered terrain pieces, maybe on top of that, and then you're done. I think it's an amazing set, absolutely.
yeah, 100%. But yeah, I had an absolutely wonderful time playing Firefight. Thanks, buddy.
Should we switch
I'm
to?
still not quite there with the rules, as you know.
Right, that's how. Yeah, you gotta learn while you play. But yeah, should we go to Deadzone then?
Let's go to Deadzone. Yes. So,
Yeah. So
Clem.
what did I do? I assembled some terrain for Deadzone. In the end, I built really bulky buildings, and so with my 2 Deadzone starters, I think I have enough for maybe 1 table. Without I mean, you have to add the scatter on top, obviously. And I think I'm happy with the assembly. It's maybe a bit denser, like the buildings themselves. They are denser than the usual super gaming oriented Deadzone buildings, but I like them like this. I need to put some paint on those ones, but I need to find a good gray or something like this with the airbrush to not go crazy. And I also followed your advice and bought STL files for modular terrain for Deadzone. I started to print some, but not a full table yet. But yeah, I think I'm I'm on a good way to be really set and ready for Deadzone. So yeah, and the next the next thing that I've done for Deadzone, and I think was smart, is ask you to build me a list. Because sure, I've read the rules like a couple of times. I know other tabletop games and so on, but in the end, I think building a list is very hard when you've played 0 games. And so I think that was a good trick to have you write a list with my models for my Plague for our first game. And I think in general that's really something game designers should do, right? Like provide a standard, get started, actual list. Like don't even ask, okay, what do you like or whatever. It's like, those are the models you get in the starter, or those are the models you get in the mega army. This is a 500 point list, or this is a 150 point list for Deadzone. You have no idea what you're doing, but take this list, play 2 games with it, and then you can do whatever you want. Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. I think in the Firefight starter box, they do have like recommended builds, but it doesn't give you a list as you're describing, Clem. I think that would be super, super useful. And yeah, I can't remember what I gave you now, but it was a balanced list. I think you had is it the sergeant who creates zombies as your leader?
Yeah.
Like the cheap guy?
Yes, it's the cheap leader that creates zombies. That was perfect. I had a bunch of zombies, like 6 or 7 maybe. Can't remember now.
Yeah, about 6 I think. Yeah, about 6 zombies.
Then 3 shooty guys, so the ghouls. 1 aberration, so the huge mastodons, and a leaper, and that might be it for the list.
It was 200 points, wasn't it? That might be it.
Oh,
yeah,
no. There's also, there's the plague, not the plague lord, but
subject 901 or something.
Exactly,
yeah, that's
yes,
it.
This
yeah,
guy.
yeah. I do try and like to put something like Plague or Maison Labs. I do try to get 2 scary melee guys in there, because I think 1 you can kind of stay away from, but 2 you can't. You know.
Yeah. If it's just 1, it's easy to set it aside and kind of waste the points. If it's 2, you have to take 1, and in the end, usually take 2 in the face, which you did.
Spoiler alert. So Clem, so we played 200 points. I was again my muscular little tasty dwarves.
Right.
And it was it actually, to be honest, it was quite the honour. It was your first game of Deadzone.
Absolutely, my first game ever.
General truthiness.
That was just my watch. My watch occasionally talks to me randomly.
Technology.
It's very weird, and that Sorry, carry on, buddy.
No, it was absolutely my first ever game of Deadzone. Because what happened after release, we were kind of still in lockdown, I think, right? I mean,
yes, we were.
Immediately after release. And so locally...
I think it was like November last year, something like that.
It might be, yeah, I think. And so we didn't play it right away. We had the same thing for Armada locally in Berlin. Like, several people super interested, like buying a starter, buying a couple of more boxes, starting to assemble, starting to paint, and then not playing right away. And then something else kind of comes on top of it, and somehow was kind of put on suspend mode. And so it was a good thing to finally have the opportunity to play my first game with the master demo. Because you've given like 3 or 4 demos that weekend, right?
3 demos. Yeah, 3 demos. It just it sounds a bit weird. I didn't set out to, but it just kicks in, and I love teaching people the game as much as I actually get the rules wrong myself. But it's just great to get new people in. There was shout out, hi Marcus, who was a really interesting guy who's half German, half Greek. And he was in, he used to live in Berlin, but basically he was visiting, right? And he lives in Athens, so he's going back to Athens. And I forgot to mention to him, Marcus, have a look and see if you can become a Mantic Pathfinder, because he's trying to get people into. I think he's built an Armada community in Athens.
Right,
which is cool.
I think that's what he mentioned, because I play Kings of War on Universal Battle with him regularly. And I think he said they have a huge Armada community, but Kings of War people are like, why would I play Kings of War? And the sci-fi stuff, I think potentially still has a chance, but it's not quite there yet. So yeah, there's open opportunity.
Yeah, fantastic. And it was. I think I have to mention this. I don't think Marcus would mind. He just, as I was talking about something else. He just sort of looked up and said, "I am aware of your podcast," and then changed the subject. That was a very German thing to say. Didn't say he liked it. Far from it. But yeah, I think it sort of implies, in the German way, I think it implies. I don't know what the Greek side of him was saying, but I think the German implies he likes it.
Yeah, if we didn't say something bad about it, then it means a neutral positive, I would say. Like the polite thing is to not say too much.
Say so.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he's read the rule book, so there were a couple of instances where he was sort of like, "Are you sure that's right?" No, no, I'm not. But I want to keep the game moving. So yeah, no. But and actually, there were a couple of things I was just getting flat out wrong. Right. So for example, the companion rule doesn't stack with having a buddy in the cube. That was just something I was getting wrong. But an important thing was there was an aberration, or one of the scary plague models in a cube with 3 of my dwarves, and I was like, I think it was the big leader guy,
right,
the big scary
Subject
leader.
901,
yeah. And I have to leave this cube and go on to the victory points to try and win the game. But what I didn't remember was that if there's 2 of your models in a cube, one of them can leave without them getting a reaction attack. And I didn't remember that, so this Plague Lord guy ended up, on my activations, eating 3 of my dwarves.
Like, okay, let me go score. Boonk, nope. Okay, maybe me. Boonk, nope.
Yeah, and there's me going, I think this is still worth doing. I think if I can just get one of them out alive, I think it's worth it. So as always, you know me, buddy, I got a ton of things wrong, but hopefully I was still fun to play with and learn with, and I got more right than I got wrong. Yeah. And there was a very nice guy from Hungary, and many apologies if somehow you're listening, I didn't catch your name. He sent a nice message on Discord, apparently, saying thanks for the demo game, but of course Discord kind of freaks me out. It's like playing Tetris on hard mode, and I don't have time.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I think
so. But he was super nice. He was a kill team player,
right?
So, but I think he enjoyed himself. I certainly hope so.
I think that's one good aspect of having gaming days rather than tournaments, because the way we try to organize it, but we'll talk about it later, right? But we don't really do tournaments locally in Berlin. Like somehow the community, even the hardcore players, don't really like it. Like I'm almost the only one who really wants to travel to tournaments and so on. Everyone else is like, oh, just give me a gaming day and maybe I'll play once or twice in the day. And what it does is also you can keep it very open, and that's what we did. Like on the Discord server for the whole Berlin gaming group that I'm a part of, it's like, hey, this weekend we will play several Mantic games. If you're curious about it, just drop by and have a look and have a chat, and we'll have more miniatures and people anyway, and so maybe you can borrow an army and do a quick game, and that's what happened. And so I think it's that's one advantage of doing it this way compared to, like, I don't think anyone would go to a tournament, to a game they never ever played without an army and try to see what it's about, right? It's much less common, I think.
Yeah, that feels too much. Also, I'd feel like I was putting everybody else out. I'd feel like I was inconveniencing other people, having to teach me the game.
Right.
You say you've never had tournaments, and it hasn't actually happened yet, but it was discussed, though, me, you and a couple of other guys talking about, well, maybe we could have a small Firefight tournament in Berlin.
Right, I think we could organize it sort of like a tournament, but give it a bit different twist, making it a bit more narrative, like selecting interesting scenarios. And I think one aspect that I like from tournament is that it's a bit more structured. Like, your first game starts at 9:30, and then you get lunch, and then you play game number 2 and number 3 at a kind of a set time, and you sort of make sure that in that day, or if it's a 2-day event, you will get 5 games in, right? So I think that part is interesting, and that's the part I would take from tournaments. The ranking at the end, I don't really care so much.
I think we could just ignore that.
Yeah.
The other thing we could do, Clem, is on the Saturday we could have 3 games of Firefight and do, not kind of a tournament format. I mean, we might not be so interested who's won what, but just 3 games at structured intervals.
Right.
And then Sunday could be, hey, people come along and we'll just play some random stuff. So maybe we could kind of do both in the weekend.
That could work. Yeah. We need to think about it, but I think we're onto something in refining a bit what it means to organize a gaming event, like be it a tournament or a gaming day or a meetup of some sort. But yeah, I think interesting stuff ahead for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Really exciting. Cool. So I think we'll just touch on this very briefly because it was a little while ago now and we haven't actually done any prep for it. But it was the Magnetar City Deadzone campaign, which wrapped up last month. And I just wanted us just to flail around wildly looking at stats for the first time and going, oh, look, Asterians won some games. So this was, we talked about it previously, this was the global campaign that Mantic organised. There's a website. It was really cool. There was, different districts of the city had different rules. It was just a really, really fun time and a really nice idea. It's, Mantic have done it before, but it was really the first time I've been playing Mantic Games when they did it. And I really enjoyed it. Hopefully my friends really enjoyed it. So the rats were just bursting out of everything on Magnetar. And I really liked the fact that it was so close, and it was the rats, GCPS, and the enforcers who were all kind of vying to take home the win. And of course, in terms of the plot and what's actually happening, that made perfect sense, which I was pathetically grateful for that. I really enjoyed the fact that actually it was very thematic. So as you can imagine, the Maison Labs and the Nameless, who are basically the 2 factions that are hard to get. You have to get them in through Star Saga, although, as we discussed earlier, Maison Labs have now just been released with boxes, which is great. They weren't played very much because they're just hard to do. But basically, the Rebs did really well. I think the Rebs won more games, so had the highest percentage of games won, which is really cool. And it was just a really fun time. Rats won. I think we're still waiting to hear what this really means because this is supposed to drive the story forward. So we're kind of waiting to see what happens. We'll probably mention it next month. What's happened with the story. But yeah, I was really impressed. It's a really fun time. I'm looking at the stats now, and I don't think anything else is particularly worth mentioning. Other than it was really, really close. Yeah,
I mean, for me, it's more question of when will the next one be. And although I didn't participate in the mixed Deadzone Firefight for the campaign, I think it's an interesting idea. To start off with a few Deadzone games and then do Firefight games, or the other way around, like in between 2 larger Firefight games, have a quick Deadzone refresher. I think that's an interesting concept. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one as well.
Definitely. Fantastic. Yeah, and sorry, Clem. So obviously you had your first game of Deadzone. What were your thoughts?
So it's an interesting system. I like the D8 and the exploding 8 is super cool. I think it really keeps things open always, and I think that's really a big feature of the game. I loved it also in Vanguard, so I'm glad to see it also in another environment. My point of reference is Necromunda, obviously, where you also get a pretty important aspect with 3D. Although in Necromunda you can also play just on a flat surface. I think it's a bit boring, but it can also happen. I think it is faster and clearer with the cube mechanics, and I don't think we've ever also discussed cover too much, right? Whereas in many games of Necromunda, I always feel like this, because you can have heavy cover or light cover, like there are tons of things that stack on top of each other and make the rules a little bit cumbersome in a way. And I didn't see that in Deadzone. I think,
albeit, sorry, buddy, albeit Marcus, there was. I think I was shooting at you, and
right.
You said, "Would that give me cover?" And I was like, "No, get out of here. I can't see your knee. Who cares about your knee?"
You wanted to kill me, huh? I know.
The new guy who I just given a demo game said, "Well, actually, in the rule book it says that would be cover." Oh, well, what? What? Come on! But Marcus was right, and I was wrong. Yes.
I think it makes that easier. I think for me, like the next thing I'm looking forward to with it is really to build also my own teams and kind of build more scenarios. But we've started to discuss like off records about making narrative scenarios and cool stuff like this. And I think there's potential also to tell cool stories. Another I think it's more on a personal level. I thought I would manage to paint the terrain, and I didn't. And it's a bit sad to play on the black building, like prime black building table. That kind of takes a little bit off of the immersion. But from the pure rule mechanics, yeah, it's a really interesting, super fun game. And another thing that I like is. Still with my idea of keeping a couple of boxes at work, like where we had the event this weekend, and do after work events, with complete newcomers. I'm pretty sure I can have a couple of Deadzone warbands and a small Deadzone table, and grab a beer, grab a pizza in the evening, and play quick games with complete newcomers to the hobby, and I think that's pretty cool.
I think you can pass it off as a board game, even though it's not.
Exactly, yeah. It's. I think it's close enough to a board game in a way that it's not too overwhelming for a newcomer, because there are sort of the good sides of miniature gaming without some of the bad sides of miniature gaming, right? Like you don't mess around with the measuring tape and you're out of range, or I'm in range. Oh, there's line of sight. Oh, there's no line of sight. It's much clearer, much simpler, and I think it makes the game much more accessible to people who are not as dedicated yet to tabletop gaming, and I think that's a huge advantage. So yeah,
fantastic. I could really see. In fact, I really want to. If let's say we have another gaming day, right? Let's play a game of Deadzone. Now let's play a game of Firefight. Now let's play a game of Deadzone. Assuming we've got the space to leave both out, I could really see myself just wanting to play one then the other, then and mixing between the two.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely something we could do, and leave the tables installed, set up, and then swap around. Yep, sounds pretty cool.
Fantastic. Nice. And I think it was your first game and you were just getting your head around it. But I think one of the things I said to you at the time was, when with Deadzone, I think people that play Plague and lose, they tend to throw things forward without any particular purpose. So, it's very easy for my magma rifles, which is it burns AP1 attack. Very, very easy for them to kill a cube full of zombies.
Right. And it did.
For no purpose. And it did. But the way you used the cover and the terrain much, in a very clever way, so that you didn't give me these easy opportunities just to wipe out the zombies. And that made a huge difference. And actually, you won very comfortably. I got a little bit of bad dice luck. I think turns
yeah,
1
there
and
was
2.
yes, absolutely.
But
That's perfect for a demo. That's what you want for a demo.
I would say, you put me in a position where, I had to make difficult decisions, and I had to, I had to roll the dice, and there was a good chance I didn't get lucky, and I didn't. And so, I think it was really, rather than just I'm not blaming the dice, I'm saying actually it was good play from you, if that makes any sense.
It was an interesting game as well. Like strategically speaking, it was. I think interesting things happened. So I appreciate this part for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really enjoyed it, and obviously your leader's ability. Okay, I just sniped that Brocker over there. Now go and have a zombie in your back line.
Yep.
But it's cool, but it's interesting to deal with, because I had to deal with problems I didn't know existed on my turn, which caused me big problems. I couldn't go after the things I needed to go after because I was having to deal with all this unexpected unpleasantness.
Yeah, it's also thematic in a way, right? Like
Totally,
I don't know, it
100%.
felt like a cool action, like not just it's gonna win me the game or anything. It's also that's pretty fun, right? Like it's a cool thing to do in the game.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So in conclusion, I had an awful lot of fun. Cool. Right. Should we talk about? Should we move on to Panathor?
I think so. Yeah, we've talked a lot about sci-fi today. So yeah.
That's a good sign, right?
Yeah, it is.
You think 3 hours of us just rambling on about models, that's a long time, right? But,
And it is, but
we
those
can
models...
really ramble on about models.
Yeah, those models aren't going to get painted on their own, so we need to occupy the soundscape while you guys paint or something, no?
Absolutely right, absolutely right. Yeah, thanks ever so much for joining us, dear listener. So, Clem, what have you done, as if that wasn't enough stuff for the month? So what have you done in Panathor, Kings of War? What have you done this month?
I think I've done strictly nothing. To be fair, I traveled for work. Like I was in Spain for about a week at some point. I tried to focus a bit more on Firefight and Deadzone in preparation of the weekend.
Makes sense, buddy. Makes sense. You don't need to come up with excuses. It's
no,
fine.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think about what I've done, but I think it's basically nothing. Like what I have on my to-do list somehow for Kings of War is just finishing some paint on my ogres, like to have a actually fully usable ogre army. And I want to do some more 10mm, like half-scale Kings of War stuff. Like I want to do a Varangor, maybe Basilian army for half-scale. So,
are we allowed to mention your secret plan for last weekend?
what was my secret plan? To bring you into it?
Yeah, into the 10mm.
Yeah, I think it's really great. The tons of cool models you can get for 10mm, I think really make it a completely different perspective today than 5 years ago or 10 years ago even.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to buy super cool looking 10mm models for War Master mostly and use them for Kings of War. And the good thing is your army is very easy to store and transport. And also the table you play it on is like 2x3, right? Because you divide everything by 2. And so 2x3 just basically fits on the living room table. Like you don't have to do anything special about it. And yeah, it's super cute, super easy. I really like it. And so, yeah, it's. I think it's interesting. I still like 28mm. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not getting rid of those armies at all, but it's a nice complement, I think.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I wish Mantic made models for them, because I feel like we could kind of endorse it more a little bit more, but I'm not sure what we should do about that. But yeah, there were some guys behind us, weren't there, on the table playing 10mm, and I must admit it looked great.
It
looked fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think
obviously the guys were showing me their 2,000 point boxes. This is what I carried my army in, and it's the the size of a book.
Yeah, it's a cookie box, right? In the cookie box, you have your full army, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah, everything's magnetized. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also easier to paint. I think it's scary. It's like, oh, they're so small that they will be hard to paint. No, it means there's less of them to paint, right? Like just slap 3 colors on it and it's done. Like you never ever paint boots or anything. It's just, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I think they're easier to get done as well.
I think one of the guy's elves, he put a lot of work. They looked beautiful. He put a lot of work into it. But I'd be with you.
Right? No, that's true.
About the boots.
He is a really good painter, and he makes top-notch looking armies. But
really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I've done something for Kings of War this month, Clem.
Yeah, really. What did you do?
So I have built and painted an entire 2,300 points of Riftforged Orcs. There's one caveat to that, is that my hordes of the Hell Strikers, I think they're called Hell Strikers.
Right, the guys on Manticores, yes?
Yes, I've only got 3 models on those bases, which sounds terrible, but I tried putting a 4th one on, and bear in mind there's supposed to be 6 for full model count. I put the 4th one on, and it just looked horribly cramped and weird, and one was facing the wrong way.
They're huge.
So I've got,
they're huge
I put
models.
a lot of effort into my bases, so they all look like very dynamic, and they're all taking off and stuff. And I love how they look, but I've only got 3 on the base. Sorry everyone. So it's only half the models I should have. But I have seen what other people have done when they fit 6 on, and it just, to me, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's too much.
Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, it doesn't. It's confusing. It doesn't, because actually, even though it's a new Kings of War box and a new army, that's another one of the ones where I look at it and I don't like the paint style on the box, and I wasn't even sure I'd like the models. The models are amazing, but I don't know. I've got 3. I'll post some pictures on the Facebook group, and people can decide. Cool. I'm happy with how they look. I'm kind of at peace with how they look, and if I could get more on there sensibly, I would have. I have more models to do it. It's just
I think that's just how it is, right? Like if they just don't fit on the base, there's no point in trying to cram there and there. So because
they're very dynamic, and I think sometimes the less is more. But as I said, I have made an effort on the base itself, so it's not just a blank base kind of thing.
So what do you have in the army? Like you got a mega army. What else?
So I started with the mega army. 2 boxes of Hell Strikers. 3 boxes of Hell Strikers. One is the hero guy,
right?
The lead, the leader on the Hell Striker. And apologies, I will forget the names. So I've got, off the top of my head, I've got a horde of the infantry. Anyway, I'm going to forget what everything is. I've got a hero, a mounted hero. I've got the Iron Boots formation, which is like 2 regiments of the standard infantry, 1 regiment of the elite infantry, which is also inspiring. Yeah, I'll get it all wrong. I've got 2 is it regiments? The small ones of Tundra Wolves, which is kind of my chaff, but they are very expensive chaff with very low nerves, so I'm a little bit worried about that. But anyway, I did a whole... So I've got the Shrine as well, which seems pretty mandatory, to be honest. And I was kind of interested to do the kind of the Mantic style paint scheme for them, because other than the Hell Strikers, I don't like how they look on the box. I do actually quite like the style. It's kind of like, reminds me a bit of Warcraft 3 or something like that. It's quite an iconic orc style, and I think it looks really cool, but I think as well, as I kind of mentioned earlier, I think it really fits where Mantic are going with, the Kings of War style. It's a bit more cartoony, but to me, in a cool way, I like it.
Yeah, no, they're cool models. I like what they've done with them, for sure.
Yeah. But I got the Shrine, and I hated the paint style on the box. I think it looks really cheesy. It's got this kind of like orange flames.
Is it like super gold, like super bright gold and stuff, no?
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, yeah. So I decided to. I mean, really, I thought I don't think I can pull that style off if I wanted to be quite honest. So I went totally the other way and painted it. I mean, I'm going to say non-metallic metals, but it's not really non-metallic metals because I'm not kind of imitating a metal style. I'm not trying to. Yeah. Anyway, it's kind of like very, very dark and rusty.
Yeah, they look super grim, but I think it's fitting, right? Like they look serious business in a way. Like
That's how I wanted them to look, definitely. Yeah. And they're kind of like legionaries. They're grim. They're orcs that have been living in the rift, so they've been basically fighting demons. The time in the rift, in the abyss. Sorry, time works differently. So basically, they've just been fighting and dying and coming back and fighting and dying and just carving up demons for a really, really, really long time, and now they're back in Panathor.
Right.
So they are kind of, they're not the mindless orcs. They are grim legionaries, professional soldiers, more like the Marauders, I suppose, in Firefight and Deadzone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think all that is super cool, right? So I went for a really dark paint style, and it does help that I can just bash that out really quickly. So, get the wet palette, get some black on there, get some dark greys on there, go.
Yeah, and then it just works out. Yeah, no, that's that's a skill.
So I have done basically. I mean, there are some things I could do, like particularly around the mouths. The mouths are very basic, I should go back in and paint some teeth theoretically, but whether I ever will do or not, I'm not so sure. But I'm happy with how they look. I'm happy with my basing. I very deliberately 3D printed specific things to go on the bases, and I'm really happy. I mean, especially I got it done in a month.
I mean, that's a part of it is cheating because it's your army number 5, 6, 7.
I don't even know. Although a lot of those I want to go back and kind of redo a lot of them because I pushed them out quick.
No, but what I'm saying is, like you get better at it, right? Like a bit better.
Yeah.
Okay, this is how I want to approach this project, and I guess if someone buys a mega army and a couple of boxes here and there, and they're like, oh my god, now I need to do something about it, and they might just do nothing for 6 months, right?
Totally.
Whereas in a month you get them to ready for battle, and they look great and so on. But I think it comes a bit from experience and from making the right decisions on what you want to achieve with them and how you're going to approach it. No praise for you at all. It's just
no, absolutely.
You just know exactly what you're doing. That's where does this joke come from? When you do something quite good and you're 20, everyone is like, oh my god, that's amazing, you've done something quite good. And when you do something quite good when you're 40, everyone is like, yeah, I mean, you're doing your job, dude. It's like,
you're old. Yeah, of course you know how to do that, old man. Yeah, exactly.
It's like no one is impressed by your achievements because that's what is expected from you.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's exactly my feeling.
I think you've touched on it, Clem, and that's kind of the reason for this topic of the month. Is just I want to try and impart. Don't get me wrong, I'm not the best modeler in the world or the best painter in the world, far from it. But I feel like I've picked up all this kind of, mostly from doing things the wrong way, but I feel like surely between the two of us we've got some tips for how someone should attack a Kings of War army, because it's such an intimidating thing. So I think we'll save the rest of that conversation for the topic of the month section. What do you think?
You're right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Cool. So what we can and
did you actually play with that army or not yet?
No. Oh, yeah, good point. So, do you remember last month Rob mentioned that a guy called Trent was moving to Germany from the US?
Right. Yeah, I've even heard the episode. I think he interviewed this guy also on his podcast, right? I've heard that.
Exactly
interview.
right. Exactly cool. Right. Yeah. So I'm playing with him.
Nice.
On Sunday. Yeah,
cool.
So it's Thursday night as we record this, dear listener. Not that it matters, but it is, just to give a bit of context.
All right.
And so no, he's coming over. I'm going to make a vegetable curry, I think.
Nice.
He doesn't mind spicy food. So my wife's going off to see her horse, so that's her hobby in the morning. So it'll only unfortunately be Sunday afternoon we can do it. But yeah, I'll feed him and then we'll play some Kings of War. Hopefully we can play 2 games. I'm not sure we'll have the time, but
Nice.
that's the aim. But his stuff hasn't arrived from the US yet, so he's got armies. He's also played 1 game of Firefight, and he said he enjoyed it.
Nice.
So I think he played with Tyler, but I might be making that up. So it's
That's pretty cool.
quite incredible, actually. That
And so he's close to you, right? He lives in the same area, more or less.
Well. So
Everything
he said to
relative,
me, so this is the difference between Germans and Americans, right? Or
Right.
one of them is that he said, "Oh yeah, Wiesbaden, that's just down the road from me." And what I thought he meant by that was the main US Army base in Germany is now in Wiesbaden.
Right.
So I thought, oh great, but he is literally down the road. It's like 7 kilometres away. No, he's an hour and a half away. But
Yeah.
you never catch a German person saying an hour and a half. Oh, that's just down the road from me.
That's
yeah.
the saying, right? Like, how is it? In the US, 100 miles is close, and in Europe, 100 years is recent. So
Yeah, exactly.
but
Yeah.
I think there's
I like
something,
that. I'm gonna have to reuse that. I like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, completely. When you see an American documentary or something, they're going, "My God, this building is over 100 years old."
yeah.
Yeah. There's like 2 minutes walk away. We've got an 800-year-old castle. You know.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. You know.
And now it's a supermarket.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. But yeah, no,
pretty cool.
and Trent, I've not met him yet, but he seems like a super nice guy. Seems like a real gentleman. So
Absolutely.
I'm very much looking forward to it.
Nice.
And he's got Forge Fathers.
Nice. So
I'll have to do my plague and do to him what you did to me, Clem. But yeah, no. So that's exciting. I'm not sure if he's finished the army, but anyway, when his stuff arrives, so that's
Right.
really exciting.
pretty cool.
So I've built him a Northern Alliance army because that's a Mantic army I've got.
right.
I obviously have no idea if it's any good. I've put 2 of the ice bolt throwers in there, so probably not. But I've given him a bit of everything, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean,
And I mean, to be fair, I built my list too, so that we're both working with the same handicap. So, but I'm a bit worried by the way he said, "Oh, I'm not really a good player," and in such a way that leads me to believe he's going to absolutely destroy me. There was that one kid at school after the exams who went, "Oh my God, it went so terribly," and they got like 98% or something. Everyone knows, and there's this charade. So I think Trent is going to absolutely destroy me. But this is my first game since Clash of Kings, which
wow,
was basically
impressive. Yeah,
almost a year ago. Isn't that shocking? But anyway, I'm correcting it now.
that's what it is. Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's pretty good. Yeah, but doing a 2,300 point army in a month, not bad. I know not getting any credit for it. Oh, and so last episode, Clem, and I've thought about this subsequently. We were talking with Rob about what to do about Kings of War and how many armies there are, and of course we had no solution. We drew up more questions than we had solutions for. I think we sort of implied they should get rid of League of Rordia because there's Kingdoms of Men. I think they should ditch Kingdoms of Men because that's the generic one. Use your generic human army. Rordia at least have lore and story now with the Halfling Civil War and that kind of thing.
Right.
So just for the record, I think they should keep Rordia and ditch Kingdoms of Men. But I think you disagree.
I mean,
or you potentially disagree.
What I like with Kingdom of Men is it keeps the door open to any historical miniature that you have, right? Any human.
I think they should close that door.
So
maybe time.
you're right. Maybe you're right. But in that case, they sort of need to revisit how they organize and structure factions as well, because they also have the Basilians. You could argue to some extent that Northern Alliance are also humans, although slightly different. I agree with you. Rordia kind of makes sense and has its special shtick in a way. There's Order of the Green Lady and Brotherhood. They're also a very specific kind of humans, but it's still humans. And so, maybe they need to shake it a little bit and come up with maybe less options that are a bit more specific. I think to some extent
That's it, Clem. I think that's key. That's a key point because they're all pretty similar. In okay, maybe you could say Green Lady, and I'm sure if you play these armies, you'd say no, they're different. But they all look on the table pretty similar. Yeah, I think limiting them so you have to make meaningful choices between them would be interesting.
I mean, I think one aspect of it, or I almost said one issue, is people play any miniature they want, right? And I think it's great. I think it's cool. But I think the game might also benefit if you saw an army and you immediately realize, oh, this is a Rordia army from Mantic Kings of War.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Like, it's not, it's random, like Vikings or whatever that do a Kings of War, Kingdom of Men army. I think, it's kind of a double-edged sword.
It's a double-edged sword.
I'm really attached to
and
the
that's what I said. Do you remember? I mentioned I wish there was there was terrain for Kings of War because I'm sick of seeing generic fantasy house on a table.
I didn't understand it like that, but now I see what you meant. Like you're not just like assembling random houses from medieval whatever. You're fighting. You're fighting in Basilia.
Exactly.
Now I understand what you meant.
That's exactly it. So you look at the table and you go, "Oh, that's in Panathor." Yeah, that's exactly right, buddy.
I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay, I didn't get that part last time we.
And then just imagine how cool that would be. I would, if there was a Northern Alliance box, with buildings from Chill or something like this, and go, "Wow, cool, we're fighting in the north."
No, now I see
Empire of Dust.
Okay, now I see it. I think you absolutely have a point, because it's kind of like getting back to the discussion we had last month. But anything that kind of supports more specific,
grounds us in the world of Panathor.
Exactly,
not just generic fantasy world 2A or whatever.
Absolutely, there's a story going on here. And you're not just throwing dice with generic humans against generic elves with your generic medieval building, but you are part of Panathor. I think, yes, there is some cool thing to do here. Yeah, now I see what you mean.
Nice. So, Clem, now, if you can, I need you to do some acting and pretend I haven't explained this to you already, okay?
I forget things, so I won't have to. I forget things and I can't read, so I'll pretend I ignore the notes that I have in front of me.
I'm just
on page 12.
I'm just a silly foreign man. I do not know what is happening.
Who, me? Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Sure. What is it? What is it?
So, excellent. So, so obviously the one thing we all agreed on last month was that Kings of War needs more armies, right? That was the firm thing we definitely agreed on.
Absolutely.
That's where we landed. So I was kind of thinking, right, so I'm just going to read out from my notes here. So this is my Panathor plot idea / new army idea, right? So something happens and the rift gets closed, right? So no forces of the Abyss are coming out of or going back into the Abyss, right? Which is, let's be honest, hell, right? So it gets closed, presumably the goodies win a big victory, whatever, maybe there's a campaign and that's the ultimate thing that happens. So then there are going to be demons just roaming all around the place, right? Because they've got nowhere else to go. So they're all on Panathor. They'll, presumably go every which way. I was thinking, what happens if, the story moves forward or the timeline moves forward, say, 50 years, something like that, like quite a significant portion of time. And I was thinking, well, what would happen to those demons during that time? Would they just stay evil demons? I'm an evil demon and I'm doing evil demon stuff and, pillaging across the land. Yeah, probably some of them would, but maybe some of them wouldn't. And so we often get in games, this idea of like corrupted humans who are now evil, And I was thinking, well, maybe it'd be interesting to go the other way, to sort of play with that stereotype and have demons that have somehow, I can't really imagine them necessarily farming, but just having some kind of stake in the world of Panathor because they've been living there a really long time. You know, they haven't had their
Right.
evil overlord telling them what to do. They've just been almost thinking for themselves or something like this, and maybe even finding a little
Right.
strand of humanity or something.
Yeah, maybe to survive they need to cooperate.
Exactly,
and
right.
They need
right.
to insert themselves in the surrounding or whatever needs to happen to keep them alive without the rifts. I don't know exactly how everything works, but if they're disconnected,
me neither. That's a good point.
I mean,
Also, me neither. Yeah,
they might-
and I didn't
yeah.
take the time of reading either. I didn't learn. But yeah, so exactly. So sort of all those questions, and then at some point the rift reopens. And then, of course, you'd think these guys or these demons would be like, "Oh, brilliant! Okay, we can go back to being evil and having the Overlord telling us what to do, and the devil effectively telling us what to do, or whatever." But maybe they're not actually that cool with that. Maybe they've changed. They've evolved. They've grown. And
I think I think it's an interesting concept. Then you need to figure out. So you wouldn't necessarily use new models for them, right?
not necessarily. No, I was thinking you could just use existing models.
Right.
I don't know what the paint scheme would be, and that would be an interesting question. But
That could be quite open. I mean, you need to also think about what makes them different. Like what kind of shtick you give them as an also from the gaming perspective. But I like it. I like the idea overall, like to kind of give a twist on the usual genre of the good guys becoming bad guys. I think the bad guys becoming good guys is an interesting one.
Yeah. Or if not good guys, just confused guys. Confused, edging toward good, because they've got a stake in Panathor now. Like, they don't want it to all be burned down and everyone to be murdered in the valley next to them or whatever.
Yeah. I think it potentially gives it some depth, and I think that's cool. I think that's an interesting twist. I mean, there's I don't know the full stuff around it, but there's something like this with the undeads, right? Like with how
Ophidians, I think.
Ophidians,
Yeah.
like with Jarvis or something. Like you can already
That's
do
him.
that in theory, right? Like if you take this unique character, then you change the alignment to good or neutral. I think good even.
It's good, I think. No, it's good, I think. Yeah.
And so, in a way, maybe they could already do something like this and maybe push it a little bit. And
Clem, you're just pointing out the fact it's this, this new original idea I had is not actually that new and original because they've already done it with the undead faction.
but it is no, but it could be kind of like there's a big twist in the whole world in a way. Like Ophidians make a comeback, and then demons like confused good demons also kind of make an apparition. Who knows? And maybe like twisting around a little bit these established lines. I mean, we also discussed last time we hate alignments, but even looking a bit further than just alignments, I think there are cool things to do here.
Definitely, buddy. Cool. And it's all just fun toy soldiers and story and narrative and it's all good stuff.
I mean,
cool.
yeah.
Sorry, buddy, go for
No,
it.
I think it also goes kind of in what we were describing just before, right? Like anything that fleshes out Panathor and gives you more of an impression. Yes, I am playing a game in that universe within the boundaries of this story and like building on top of it and around it and everything. Anything that goes in this direction is really a positive for the game, and I think. Yes, there could be some changes or some improvement on the game mechanics itself, right? Themselves, but it's pretty good where it is now. And so I think what it's missing most, or what could really be pushed forward more, is this narrative and immersion kind of stuff. So I think this goes in the right direction. Long story short.
Completely agree with you, buddy. Yeah. I mean, if you go back to tinkering with the rules, you might make the game 5% better, but is that really significant? The game's already great in terms of rules and balance.
Right. Well, you could make it worse.
And
also.
actually, I'm realising this is really important to me, that it's more important. When I look at a table and go, it's just a generic fantasy table, I want to feel like we're in Panathor. And actually, to this point, I haven't really felt like that. I'm playing a fantastic game of Toy Soldiers, Kings of War. It's brilliant. But I don't really feel grounded in Panathor. I've got the map up in my games room of Panathor, but I don't really, I as you say, Clem, I really want us to build on this, and I think as a community we're kind of part of that,
Absolutely. I mean, it's still pretty recent, right? Like, Panathor had a different name like 2.5 years ago or something like this, right? Like, it's, when you think about it, it's relatively recent, and given how recent it is, there's already a few things that are pretty unique to it, and so I think it's just a question of keeping building on top of that and making it matter also during the games. And I'm not saying in crazy ways.
Those two things together, definitely, buddy. And I've read 2 of the novels. I've read Drowned Secrets and Steps to Deliverance. They're both pretty good fantasy novels, and I enjoyed them. I haven't read any of the others. I've got them on my Kindle, but I need to get around to reading them. But I think you're of the mind that those all that stuff has to feel impactful on the game you're playing, and I think that's a really important point. You've kind of hinted at that previously, right?
Yep. Yeah. No, I think it does make a big difference. Yep.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. So should we move on to talking about Armada?
I think so. Yes. Mm-hmm. So what's up for Armada? I played not exactly. I almost played my first game of Armada. By almost, I lent my Basilians sheeps to a friend who actually played the game, and I was around watching because Marcus is kind of an expert with the system, and I thought, hey, I have no idea about how this game plays. Can you make a list with my models? And so I redid the same trick from Deadzone, and I had him write a list with the models that I have. I think 150 points list, so not too big, not good for starters. And then I have it played, and so I was basically starting to put stuff away on the side, and so that's why I didn't want to necessarily play the game myself. And also we were 3 people at that point, and so I kind of thought, okay, maybe I shouldn't be the one playing. It's better if I'm the one.
You did the nice thing.
Also, I just wanted to be done with everything else, like ready to just close the building and leave afterward. And so I saw most of Armada game, and it's pretty cool. It's I think it took a bit longer than I was expecting. I thought it was a bit more piff paff poof skirmishy. I have 4, 5, 6 ships maybe, and in 1 hour tops I'm done with it. And I think it lasted longer than this in the end, which isn't necessarily bad.
You'd very, very kindly dropped me off at the train station and then gone back, basically, right? So I was gone.
Right.
So it was you, Marcus, who's the chap we mentioned earlier, who lives in Athens. He really knows what he's doing with Armada. Was he playing with another person who was brand new to the system?
Pretty much. I mean, almost brand new, like Vincent. I think played a couple of games already of Armada, but is in Berlin, and in Berlin, at least from our group, we don't really have a ton of experience with Armada yet. So that was also a good thing for him because he already knew the rules a little bit. So we thought it would be a bit more efficient, like they could actually go through the games almost normally because they both knew how it goes. And I could still learn, okay, this is how you do all the game actions, and now I understand what I read in the book by seeing it being played, and I can ask questions while it's happening. So I think it worked out pretty well to do it this way.
Nice. And what did it take? Maybe 2 hours?
Maybe not. I think an hour and a half. I don't remember exactly. Like I didn't watch my check my watch all the time. But it was playing. I think 8 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's.
I think that's normal. I think normal.
I think that's normal.
Off the top of my head,
which for me is almost like 50% more rounds that I'm used to with other games.
all my stuff is normally dead by turn 4, so
But I mean, so it is a kind of a different perspective on how you approach the game, but I like it. I mean, I really enjoy the fact that the game mechanics are different, like that you have constraints around how you move your gaming pieces. I think it makes for a very interesting, very refreshing gaming experience. I'm not that much into ships and sailing and everything.
You said
in
that
general.
before. You're not a big ships guy.
So that's not really what brings me into the game, but they look cool. I like the models. I mean, I painted my Basilians now. I'm buying a bit more orcs to have 2 fleets ready. I do like them. It's just I was a bit more initially on the reserve and like, I want to see how it's going before I get too much into it. But now that I've seen it, I think it's another game that is potentially also close to a board game. Like I when I saw this game happen and with all the models on the table and everything, I thought, you know what, I'm pretty sure I can put all of this stuff in a nice board game box, like once everything is painted, everything is ready, and just put it on the shelf here and have a game like this as a, again, after work, like, grab a beer, grab a pizza with a colleague or with someone from the same co-working space and just play like you would play Risk or whatever board game people play. And so I think that part also really convinced me, and I think it's pretty cool.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm in exactly the same spot as you. As I'm really impressed by the game. I think it's good game design. I think it has its niche. It does its own thing, but within the Mantic, the wider Mantic Games. And yeah, so I've got Basilian fleet and an Orc fleet. I've got more ships to paint. I've got the starter box done, but then I've got like the fleet boxes for both kind of thing. So I've got that to do. Funnily enough, my friend who plays with me, but he doesn't have the bandwidth to really get into the hobby, but he's very happy to just come over and play. So we sometimes play Walking Dead, we sometimes play Kings of War.
Right.
His favourite game is Armada.
Nice. Yeah, because I think it can
and
be
that's
very
the only one
appealing.
he seriously thought about
Yeah.
buying into himself. And he has, he got the website on his phone and had a look and thought maybe. And it's the first time I've ever actually seen him do that. And funnily enough, actually, he came to a tournament at Top Tables in Cologne for Kings of War with me, and just as a bit of a surprise, on the way back, I had a Basilian starter, one of the small starter armies.
Right.
I had the box. I'd never touched it, and I thought, well, could I, rather than it's just sitting in my basement, maybe I just give it to Dennis. And he was super, super grateful, and he thought about it and thought, well, when am I ever going to get the time to do any of this?
Right.
So he very, very nicely said, you know what, Chris, thank you so much for offering, but I'm going to pass because I just don't think I'm going to be able to
make anything
to
useful
do it,
with
right?
it. Yeah.
But anyway, long story short, he's more of a board gamer, I'd say, in general, and he's very impressed with Armada. Yeah,
and I think it's really true. Like, it is very close to a board game, but in the good sense of the term, right? Like, I think it really does appeal to this population of people who are into board games. So yeah, I think that it really has this going for itself. And so now I don't know if there's like inserts, foam inserts for the starter set box, but if there's none yet, I need to make something. I think I threw away my box, so I won't make foam inserts, but I need to hack something together. And I think I really want to have everything in the box ready for Orcs versus Basilia Armada game. I think there's potential for it. So.
And to your point about just watching others play the game, I actually really like that. Like if it was a game of Firefight or Kings of War going on, I'd love to just sit and have a nice cold beverage and just enjoy
Yep.
laughing at other people's misfortune.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also interesting. Also for games that you're still discovering, it's good to watch other people play it because you can discover new tricks and new things.
Yeah,
so
that's a really good.
I think
That's a really good point.
that part is interesting. Like, when I look at the rules for Armada, I can understand some of it, right? Like how it works and so on. I could get myself through it, but it's entirely different if I have a 5-minute discussion with Marcus, who has played dozens of games against dozens, like all sorts of fleets and everything. Like, he really has a completely different understanding of the game, and very easily can tell you, okay, now this is what's going to happen, more or less, and usually that's what you want to do with your list, and this is super interesting, this is less so interesting. This kind of understanding you only get with more experience or with chatting with someone who does have this experience. So I think this is
100%.
also a good part of it.
Fantastic. Cool. And so we've already been talking about it already, but let's talk a little bit. So we've got a special segment this month. So the Gaming Day in Berlin.
Right.
So Clem, do you want to just talk us through? So I got the train late Friday after work and got to you about 9:30, I think.
Something like this, yes.
Friday night.
Yeah. Yeah, so the idea of the gaming day is we don't have that many gaming spaces in Berlin. That's kind of an issue, actually. And so a couple of years ago, we started to kind of gather several groups, like people who were playing Kings of War, with the people who were playing AOS, with people who were playing Kill Team. And that's how we ended up with a pretty large Discord server now for Berlin. So it's the International Tabletop Gaming Club Berlin, tabletopberlin.com website. And so it's not yet an official club or anything, so we don't have our own space. It's more just a community of people interested in tabletop and organizing games, at your place or at my place, one table at a time. And that's great. But I also like...
Sorry, Clem, it's fair to say probably the pandemic changed plans somewhat, didn't it?
Right. I mean, during the pandemic, obviously, you don't want to create a completely new organization and rent some space that you cannot use. So that didn't make it easier, for sure. But yeah, so there are like two gaming shops in Berlin where you can basically book a table and go play. But it's very limited in how many tables are even available there. And one of the super famous ones is Battlefield Berlin, and they have like 5 tables, I think. 6 tables, maybe. And
that's 6 tables for every game system and everyone that wants to play, right?
Yes.
In the city of Berlin.
Absolutely. And so that also means... So they also open 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays. So... in a way, it kind of limits how much time you have, right? If you want to fit 3 games in there, you really have to be on top of your game. And the other issue is if you haven't booked the whole area to organize a small event 3 or 4 months in advance, then it's no chance, right? Like you don't even find space there. And so, yeah, we've been looking at other places where we could organize events, like tournaments or rather gaming days like we do. And turns out my workplace, so it's basically a big co-working space where my company rents space. They said, well, sure, we don't use our basically all the facility during the weekend, and I have a 24/7 access to it anyway. And so if they are not organizing a special event on a Saturday, then I can set up gaming tables and play there. And so that's what we've done.
And just to describe it, Clem, if I may, so it's basically an old DDR, so an old East German factory.
Right. Yeah,
that's been turned into a super cool kind of shared workshop. You've got huge industrial laser cutters there in one section. You've got loads of 3D printers. So there's all creative people doing clever creative things working on there. their own things in the week. There's a huge kitchen and a big open area. It's just the whole thing is a huge open area, right? I think there's 2 levels. There's a double-decker bus just in the building, which is
in the area of the
meetings,
factory. Yeah, it's
right?
a meeting rooms. Yeah, I mean, so the pitch for this space is it's a co-working space, but for people who do hardware products. So if you build an electric bike, or if you build some kind of machinery with your startup, then you don't just need offices. You actually need a space where you can have prototypes, and
and these machines cost probably tens of thousands of euros.
Right.
You probably don't want to buy one of these machines yourself if you can avoid it.
Absolutely.
Particularly if you're tinkering on prototypes, right?
Yeah, so there is some aspect of sharing the equipment like this, but it's very flexible, right? Like you can rent month per month some space, like from 15 square meters to 150 square meters if you like. And so it's a pretty good place to be in when you have a product like a startup that really requires some hardware and stuff like this. So that's basically what I do for work. Like the company I work for uses this kind of facility, and so I can also get the space for free, which makes a big difference, right? On the weekend when it's not used. And so, yeah, that's the pretty cool.
Sort of free. I mean, effectively, you're paying for this, right, in a monthly service. I mean, your company pays on your behalf, but
of course,
effectively, yeah.
Of course,
yeah.
no. What I'm saying for free is like I do have a paid for membership, and I have to be there and discuss it every time. It's more if they don't organize an event, I can say, hey, that weekend I'll bring some friends and we'll play games. And okay, cool. Just don't ruin the place, like leave it clean when you leave, and it's fine. Like I don't need to give them 150 euros just for renting the space for Saturday afternoon or something like this. So
yeah, what I'm trying to hint at, dear listener, is don't just turn up randomly to a co-working space, no matter how cool and hipster it is, and expect them just to be cool. I mean, they might be.
Who knows, right?
They might not be.
I mean, if you have a business case around it, like you come in and you bring everything ready for a cool after work event and something like this, and you have enough
value.
You have enough paid members who register for your events, then you're a different kind of entertainers, right? Like they do this kind of social event all the time. And so I'm pretty sure there is some possibility to do gaming events like on a Thursday afternoon or Thursday evening or whatever, to completely new audiences like this. Because obviously of all these like tech people and maker people, a lot of them might like the creative aspect of our hobby and the cool, playing a game like a video game, or like, role-playing games, that's nice, I've heard about it, I can try it for one evening and have a good time, and that's it, right? And then you show it to 12 people and maybe 1 or 2 actually really like it, and that's how you grow your club, I think. Anyway,
I think that's really cool. No, and again, we're getting away from that, just trying to convince 40k players, come on, this is a better game. Firefight is a much better game than 40k.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really smart, Clem, and it all dovetails beautifully. Yeah, 100%.
I mean,
yeah. So, and also, I would just add, I know we're not doing a podcast on this, but it was my first time in Berlin. I had an absolutely amazing weekend. Thank you so much, Clem, for being such an amazing host. And
thanks
obviously chatting to your lovely wife was as delightful as always. And I would just say the food in Berlin is excellent. Yeah, I mean, people talk about it a lot, but the standouts for me, and I won't go on and on about this because we've actually got a lot to cover still. The Vietnamese food we had Friday night, that was amazing.
Yeah, really
Vietnamese food, that was excellent. And your homemade kimchi was brilliant.
Thank you.
I've had kimchi before and not enjoyed it. I didn't want to mention that to you. But your kimchi, I had about 6 portions, as you saw, so as you're well aware. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks. I'm glad you liked it. But food is an important part of social events. At least I do like food quite a lot, and I know you do. So that's one point of friendship. Like we can enjoy good food and good games.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you again. Thanks, buddy.
That was super fun.
Absolutely magical weekend. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Right. So let's. Anything else to say about the gaming day?
Not much. I mean, I think the next question is when is the next one, right? Like we've hinted a little bit to this. So obviously, the organization of those events kind of takes on a lot of energy on my side because we have to move mats and terrains every time and so on. So I don't want to do them too frequently.
I was going to say, actually, buddy, I was shocked Saturday morning when we were just loading stuff in the car, and I was surprised how much work that was, and I, you did most of it.
Well, it's also because I'm
But just
not organized so well, right? I'm sure people who organize tournaments all the time, they have great storage boxes and they know exactly where the stuff is. And they know,
Right.
boom, 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 I get 4 boxes. I have everything to equip 16 tables for Kings of War. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, I'm juggling with 5 different boxes. I'm 1 box short and I get like a laundry basket to transport additional stuff and it's a mess.
I thought that was a nice touch.
Right.
I thought that was classy.
But that's what happens when you lack the experience around this. So obviously there is some improvements that could happen in that department. But still, I think even if everything was completely well organized on that front, I still have to be there, like the first person to open the door and the last person to close the door. So I don't want to do this every other weekend or something like this. And so I think the next one will be in a couple of months, maybe a bit more, because in a couple of months it's September. September is a tough month for everyone. But yeah, I think maybe late September, early October, we'll have another big gaming day like this. And maybe a Firefight tournament or like a narrative Firefight Deadzone sort of thing. I'm not sure. We need to discuss it.
Try to avoid the weekend of October the 8th and 9th, if you can. Because I'm not available.
Right. I'll look into it and circulate the dates anyway on the Discord and stuff like this. That's the other thing, right? Like, initially I thought, maybe I'll just publish about it on T3, so tabletop tournaments, the big website for Germany and the UK, I think as well. It's used quite a lot in the UK. Not sure.
I think it has the ability to be. I don't know how popular it is. I'm not sure.
But at least I know it is popular in Germany. And like invite our friends from Hamburg, friends from Köln, to come and play. And I thought, let's keep it small to begin with. Like, I don't want to have too many people, too many tables. Like, it's more than I can handle. But slowly I want to kind of grow this capacity and just organize cool events, and maybe some people will want to travel for them. I don't expect people to travel from very far. I mean, you're probably the one that will travel the furthest. But
but I think if people have the experience I had, I think they will travel very far because it was amazing.
It's going to be pretty busy on my couch then.
Quite possibly. Yeah, that aside, sleeping arrangements aside, I'm not sure we can offer that on the website. Everyone can sleep at Clem's flat. Everything's fine.
Right.
Cool.
Tents in the garden, and that's it. Anyway, so next events, I think I'm looking forward to kind of craft custom scenarios and cool, narrative missions for it, and try to refine what we can do for a gaming event that isn't just a completely casual gaming day like we've been doing, not a full tournament, kind of taking the best out of each side and create a really awesome weekend experience. So that's
it feels quite unique as well. Anyway, we've got 45 minutes left, and I want to actually, if we can, talk about the scenarios, but we've got a ton of stuff left to cover, so let's keep things moving.
Let's go for it.
So let's move on, Clem, if you're okay. Let's move on to the topic of the month. Yay! Which is our tips for getting into Kings of War. So I think the challenge with Kings of War is it's a heck of a lot of models. It's a big hobby commitment. The game is super fun, super easy to learn. But the problem is getting new players in with that hurdle of like, this is a lot of models to paint, right? A few other issues too.
I kind of want to disagree. So yes and no. I think on paper that's what it looks like, but I think people.
But I'm talking as a new person looking at Kings of War from the outside.
Okay,
right?
So from the outside, you're like, hey, do I want to play Deadzone and I paint 7 models, or do I want to play Kings of War and I have 150 goblins to paint? Right, and it's how much money will I have to spend on an army if there's 10 times the amount of models? Like, I don't have that much time, I don't have that much money, and so...
And that's something we don't talk enough about. Probably is that's obviously money is a factor, right?
But if you look into it, actually, it's not that much more expensive. Like, I'm pretty sure some other games with much less models are immensely more expensive. So it's not just how many models you need to put on the table. It's you'll buy a mega army, you'll buy a couple of boxes, blah blah blah.
Yeah, Clem. So you brought us on beautifully. That's a beautiful segue into our first point. So let's say you're building. So we're talking about you want to play Kings of War, and we're assuming you want to do it with Mantic models, right? Because you could 3D print stuff if you really wanted. You could get, an old Warhammer Fantasy army on eBay that is, you strip down and repaint. There's loads of different ways you could do it. But if you're doing a Mantic army, I would say almost always start with the Mega Army box because they're really good value, right? You get a lot of stuff in them. One or two of those.
It's a good selection of units you will need at some point anyway, and so it is an amazing deal. So that's a no-brainer. You like this army? Obviously, just get the Mega Army for it, Mega Army box, and that's the starting point. Obviously,
and my personal opinion is, I would say Abyssal Dwarfs or newer, I would probably say. If it were me, I would probably stay away from the older stuff, but that's a personal preference.
Yes and no, because I love Forces of the Abyss, and I think the Forces of the Abyss range is great, and it is older.
That's true. Yeah, your army looks great. Yeah, that's fair. Were they relatively easy to build? Were they okay to build?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
right. Well,
the hard plastic. You're right. You're right.
The newer stuff is typically nicer.
In general, yes.
In general, with some exceptions. Although, and in fairness, the undead range, for example, is old but still looks good.
That is true. Yes.
The one thing I'd say to that point, though, and this is something that occurred to me last week, I think. So I wish that Mantic, because I think the Mega Army boxes on the website, if you buy it direct from Mantic, I think it's about €140. You can get that cheaper if you go through third parties, but I think they're about €140 now.
I think you're right.
I wish now for the new models, I think that's a good deal. But if I were to buy, for example, the Elf Mega Army box for €140, that doesn't seem like such great value. So I do wish Mantic kind of had maybe if the Elf army was €90, maybe. I don't know, but I kind of feel like it's. I feel like there's a tiering there with what's good value. But this again, it's all personal.
Maybe. I mean, I think for me, it's about the experience, right? Like, what do you get for that money? Like, how fun are the models to assemble and then to paint? How close are you to your first 1,000 point list? I think
True.
this is the more important part for me. Obviously, if it's old models and for whatever reason you don't like the style because they look dated to you or whatever, then this is bad. But I would just argue then this is not the army you should select, and that's it. You see what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. I see what you mean. So there's a few different things that come into play, right, with making decision. I still think by far and away the most important one is aesthetic quality.
Right.
What do you think looks cool, right? Now, it might be complicated by the fact that maybe there's 3 armies you think look really cool. I would almost always go with one of the ones you think looks cool rather than worrying about rules. But if you're someone who's nervous about batch painting or nervous about painting in general, maybe you think ogres look cool and goblins look cool. Well, in that case, I probably would go with the ogres because not only do you think they look cool, but also they'll be a much easier hobby commitment, probably, right? It's not biting off so much.
Potentially, yes, it would look a bit less scary. And then again, it's just playing devil's advocate here, but I'm pretty sure you can spend 10 times more effort on an ogre than on a goblin, and in the end have much more work to paint your ogre army than a goblin army. But it's true that it requires a certain skill, maybe, to churn through 150 goblins, compared to how many ogres will you have in a 2,000 points ogre list? 50 maximum, right?
Maximum.
Yeah, in that area, it's true. Finding something that you like the look of, but also for which you can have a strategy painting, or like you see yourself having fun painting them. It's true. I think it's an important point. I think it might also make sense to simply discuss it with your local players as well. I mean, there are different scenarios. Like if you're on your own, like no one else around you play Kings of War, then you have another question in front of you, right? Like, what am I going to do with my armies? Or maybe you will need to build 2 armies to even get started.
And at that point, you probably would buy one of the 2-player starter boxes.
Right.
And you're getting the rules in there and you're getting an unbelievably good deal.
Absolutely.
It's only going to give you a taste of Kings of War with the units you get for the 2 different forces. But we were looking at them yesterday, Clem, I think, and it was like, was it somewhere in Spain that was doing the starter box, what, €71?
Yes, there's I think Goblin Trader right now is having a sale, and there's tons of Mantic stuff with 25% off or something like this.
Yeah. So that's
but
an
even
unbelievable deal if you need 2 small forces to start with.
Even at regular price, those starter sets are amazing value. I think if you like one or both of the armies, just go and get them. Like I have 2 or 3 of the starters, and like I can't recommend them enough. But anyway, my point was, if you already have like even a small gaming group locally, it might make sense to have a chat with other players. Like, oh, what armies are you playing? I was thinking of this army. What you think on the play style? Maybe you could proxy some stuff and test it out quickly to confirm that you actually like this style and so on. So I think making that decision not just on your own, not just for yourself, but also coordinated in a way with your gaming group might make sense. And if there is no gaming group, like no one else is playing Kings of War around you, then definitely you need to think about both sides of the equations, like having a second small force as well, so that you can try to grab someone near you and convince them to play.
And I would just add to that, Clem, to your point, is if you have a local community where you are, even if it's just a couple of players, just go down and observe a game, because you'll probably, maybe you like the idea of Empire of Dust, but then maybe you find Surge confusing, or, maybe you can just learn a little bit and get a feel for the way the different armies work.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's always an interesting thing to observe and gain some insights, like in person. I think that's an important aspect of it. And also, I think a lot of people make gaming decisions by how many people actually play them, like how easy it will be to find opponents to play it. I mean, maybe you and me are a bit different in that aspect. Like, if there's a game that I like, then I'm not afraid of just buying 2 factions and then annoying everyone around me. Like, hey, do you want to give it a try?
I probably should have been more afraid of this, but no, I just get overexcited. Yeah, completely. Yeah.
And so I think you just have to be a bit honest about yourself. Like, is it something you will enjoy or not? And try to think about how you invest yourself in this. But yeah, and I think really, as soon as you have 2 people interested in it and playing it, then everyone else around can see, oh, there is an active group of 2, but it's a group of people playing this game, And so from now on, if I decide, hey, maybe I give it a try, well, at least I have these two people that are actively playing the game. And so if you are interested in a game like this, I think finding those people and basically forming a group with them is a very, very important step in your journey.
And this is where I keep kind of falling back down again, actually, is there's obviously me with tons of armies, tons of enthusiasm for Kings of War. Finding that other person who's willing to actually commit financially and effort-wise has been really, really tough. And so it is still me. At times, I've kind of had a couple of people in, but it hasn't really worked, and they've fallen away again. So that I found really challenging.
Yeah, I mean,
we could.
It doesn't. Sorry, just to say one thing on this. I don't think it has to be always the same person, but it's more kind of to make it visible. Like, if you ever decide that you're interested in this game, well, at least you can come to me, and I'm happy to have a game, and I have even an army I can lend you if you're on a play. While you're painting your own, you can borrow mine, or while your army is being shipped from the US, I'm happy to lend you my army, like one of my armies, and then we can have games. I think figuring out these kind of contacts, or being that person yourself, if there's no one else around you that does this, is a very important element in getting the motivation and the occasions to play later as well.
100%, buddy. We haven't got this in the notes, but one thing actually I'd really like to talk about, because I think it's super important, is the bases, right? So obviously Kings of War uses multi-bases. You don't need to worry about having the exact number of models, right? When I started with Kings of War, as you know, Clem, I was pretty obsessed with the idea of individually basing all of the models, because I was like, oh, what if I want to change from a horde to a regiment? Well, in hindsight, you just put the two regiments next to each other. And if you really, really want to, you could theoretically glue them together, but you don't need to. So getting... there's loads of laser cutting services where pretty cheaply, right, they'll laser cut you some MDF, the right size bases. That's really, really important. You can then get some, basically magnets, like rollable, what would you even call that? Foil?
Fridge magnet, like fridge magnet?
Yep. Stick that to the bottom. And then you can get as fancy with the basing as you want. And actually, I think basing is very easy, very fun. And you can be, you can keep it simple. You can just kind of stick glue and maybe bits of, cork, or maybe bits of foam on there or something like that. And give it a painting and dry brush it. It'll look nice. And that's a ton of work to do, right? In terms of like just getting your army ready and, it's quick, it's easy. It's very difficult to go wrong with that stuff. So, and I think that's really important when you're doing your first army, to get all that stuff done.
So I'm not 100% sure I agree here, but that's because I've been kind of reluctant to directly multi-base. I really thought hard about it when I was doing my Abyssals initially, and I thought, yeah, but I'm not too sure what style of multi-bases I want to make. I don't really have a good idea for a theme for them somehow. Also, I started with Vanguard, and so with Vanguard you have the individual base models. True. And the thing that decided me, I think, is the Succubi. They're running, and so the only contact to the base is like 1 foot. And I thought, this will work if I glue it to a plastic base, but to a multi-base, I'm afraid this will break. And what if I want to use them in a different system and so on? So I can understand the... and now I do have an army that is multi-based. Like my undeads are multi-based, right? But my Forces of the Abyss, my Ogres, my Night Stalkers are not multi-based. And did I ever take the individually based models out of their trays to play in different systems? No, I haven't. So
yeah.
In hindsight, yeah, I probably could have just glued them to a multi-base and be done with it. But
and of course, you can 3D print something cool, old ruins or something like that. So if you're getting really fancy,
yeah, I think there's tons of super cool projects, super cool options there. I think it's a strength of the game. Another thing that it allows you, if you use multi-base like this, is you can start with the bases, like just buy some MDF, and maybe put one model on top of it, like with blue tack even, right? And you can already play the game and test out, do you like how this army is playing or not, before buying a single model. Or if you have only painted 3 of them, well, it kind of sucks. But everyone, if you're kind of it's a work in progress, everyone will be like, okay, well, you're getting there, buddy. Like, come to the gaming days with your army that is a work in progress, but at least you can already do something. And it's you have the full army if you have the bases, the multi bases, basically. So I think that's a big there's a big advantage in how to approach it, and just not give up too easily on it.
Yeah, I mean, I found with my orcs, I mean, I've got roughly, say for example, a regiment should have 20 orcs. I've probably got 14, 15 orcs on there. Yeah. I've 3D printed something orky, put it on there, and it's if you have, assuming you have access to a 3D printer, it's quick, it's easy, it's relatively cheap, and
you can buy those basing small gizmos and put them in. I think for me, because I thought more about it, I think one of my issues is I have a hard time seeing an army as a finite project. And I know we've done it for the half-scale Kings of War stuff. We said, okay, we make a 2,000 point list. Like day one, you write a list before buying any model, painting anything or whatever. You write the list, and this is your list forever with this army.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's a very well-defined, finite project. You just have to make 8 bases because that's what is in your army, and that's it. Like, whereas all of my other armies, they're still work in progress. Like my Forces Heraldries, I have 4,000 points, I think, and I still have some half-painted units because I'm always adding some stuff on top of it, even if I probably will never need my 3rd or 4th hordes of lower abyssals. But I have them, and I started to paint them, and so I'm like, oh, I'll keep building them. So I think maybe, visualizing, okay, this is the army I want to make, and this is how I'm approaching it, I think maybe makes your life easier to also commit to the multi-base and just do one project at a time.
And it's not something I've ever actually done, right? Because I just get carried away and run ahead. But I think that's probably a good tip. We probably should have said, write your list in Easy Army, 2,000 points, 2,300 points, whatever you want to play or they play locally for you, or if you want to go to tournaments, probably 2,300 would be the I think the correct answer now. It seems that's where we've moved to. So you make your list, you get your multi-bases made. Clem maybe disagrees, but maybe doesn't.
So in that case, if you have a project like this, then yes, I think multi-basing is fine. And as I mentioned, multi-base, the advantage is you can test out before you commit too much, with just basically almost the empty base, right? And figure things out. I think I would do more than just 2,000 and 2,300 points. I would do a 1,000 point list, 1,500, 2,000, 2,300.
I like that. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because 1,000, especially if you're kind of a beginner, or if you ever want to play demos with someone, I personally find that 1,000 points is already good enough to get a taste of Kings of War without it being too big. And it's technically less models to get ready to have a fully painted army. And that feels good.
So you're giving yourself milestones and you can play the game as well. Yes. It's not just like, okay, come back in 2 years when you finish this massive hobby project.
Yeah, something like this. And I think if you approach it from the multi-basing angle, you can buy all of your multi-bases for 2,300 and maybe you'll start painting and assembling the units for your 1,000 point list. So some of your games you'll have some empty multi-bases, some others you'll have, your army will flesh out over time a bit more. So
yeah, definitely. Fantastic. And no, I think actually that's a really good point, Clem. So, and I think then what we'd probably recommend is, I mean, we've got airbrushes, and if you're getting into the hobby, I think airbrush is one of the best tools you can use. It's magic. You know, when it works properly, it's magic.
Yeah.
Like 3D printers.
Yes.
But fair enough, use spray cans if you don't want to make the commitment to an airbrush. But I think we'd recommend spray it black, maybe Zenithor prime it, as you were mentioning earlier, if you're feeling particularly fancy. And then, Clem, do you want to just talk us through kind of because I think you're excellent at this.
So,
do you want to just talk us through kind of your principles for approaching this Kings of War army?
For me, I know I need to understand how I'm going to get stuff done if I want to get started, because I'm very lazy. Yeah. I'm very lazy and I don't like losing or failing. And I do quite often, to be honest, but whenever I can think a little bit and avoid this, I certainly try to do so. And the story of my first Kings of War army is the Forces of the Abyss. So I got Vanguard models, so it's just a warband, right? Like it's 15, 20 models maybe. And somehow I came up with a color scheme for them, like a technique and what color to use. So I painted them like orangey fire, right? And the flames I paint bright green, like a contrast, like opposing color. And I was really super proud and super happy with the result. I was like, man, I love those models. I love this color scheme. I don't want to just paint 20 models of them. I want to paint 150 and have a full army of them. And that's how I got my first Kings of War army painted. It's not like, I also, long time before that, I wanted to play the game, but I didn't know how, and I ended up not doing it. But what really made me fully paint my first Kings of War army is exactly this. Like, first figuring out how I'm going to get stuff done, what colors do I like for those models, what techniques can I use to make my life not too miserable when I have to go through my 5, 10, 12 units. And from there, yes, it becomes very easy. So I don't know, what's your first Kings of War army, Chris?
The first Kings of War army I did was... initially, I ordered an old High Elf army on eBay I found that was already painted, and I thought, I'd just like to give Kings of War a try. And it was something like €70 for this army, and it never arrived. So luckily I got my money back, but it never ever arrived. So then I found myself on this very small commitment, just looking on the Mantic website. Oh, the Northern Alliance were new. They look cool. Then I went straight into Mega Army, the smaller army box, and you know me, I got everything. And then it's kind of like, okay, well, now I need to make this work. But I'm the furthest thing away from a procrastinator, right? You know me, I charge into things without really thinking about the consequences, right? That's just how my brain works or doesn't.
Right.
So, I just go in and get things done. I should almost certainly think more about the consequences of things, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, you're the one who posted on the Fanatics group, test models are for losers or whatever. Was it?
For cowards, right?
And I'm like, right, that's why I don't do just one test model. I do 5 of them. And then I write down my strategic painting plan to make it happen fast. And once I have my process in mind...
Do you make notes? Do you honestly make notes?
I'm messier than that. So I try to make some notes. My latest strategy is I actually take pictures. So we can also discuss about this for paints, because I think we have a different opinion on paints.
Yeah.
But once I find my technique and like a assembly of colors, I would put my 7 or 8 paint pots on the table next to a model and take a picture of them, and maybe in chronological order of which color goes first and so on. And then I can go through my older pictures and see, Forces of the Abyss. Oh yeah, I need that orange, I need that yellow, that red, and then it's this red, this green, and this blue, and whatever. This is the gold color that I was using. And I know if I need to paint another unit 6 months later, 2 years later, I know more or less how I can do this. But
I think that's an excellent idea. Photos, yeah.
Notes, I'm too lazy for this. Like, not the good kind of lazy on that front. But
also, it's you're talking about a very visual thing, and notes aren't particularly visual. I know you don't typically mix paints, which makes it maybe a little bit easier to take notes, but still, I think photos is just the way to go. That just makes sense to me.
Yeah, because notes, I turns out sometimes I didn't take notes, or I lost my paper where I made all these notes.
Or you got paint on your notes.
Yeah, for my bolt action army back in the day, I found a coloring picture of an actual soldier, like for something for kids or whatever, and I printed this like in 4 per page and 2 pages like this, and I did step 1 and painted it all of this, and then step 2 I did the same plus what is step 2 on top of that, and then really a step by step guide for myself, and I've never done it again for any other army since then. But yeah, so anyway, back to the topic of how do you paint a Kings of War army. I think for me, figuring out your strategy for it, like your color scheme. For example, my ogres. So what's the story behind my ogres? We were playing Vanguard. I was winning too many games in Vanguard, and I looked at the factions and discussed with the other players which faction looks like it's the worst. And we thought, ogres look like shit. And I thought, okay, I also like the Mantic ogres. Let me buy just a box of warriors or whatever, like a small warband scale of ogres. And then playing around with colors. Well, I want to do a yellow armor for some reason, and like a blue, like a wolf blue skin, because I don't like the red skin ogres, like the official color scheme. And that was my warband, and it was super fun. I liked the color scheme, I liked the models, so I ended up buying a mega army pretty quickly, because I also want that kind of model and that kind of model. Well, they're all in the
Clem,
mega
you've
army.
got the exact opposite problem that I'm anticipating a lot of new players have, where they start painting it and get disheartened, whereas you're painting 5 models and going, okay, I need a whole Kings of War army because this is awesome painting this.
So I'm talking about the armies that ended up existing, right?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
So that's the thing. Like, I also have some Varangers that never got to completion. I have some Goblins that never got to completion. I have some Trident Realms that never evolved past Warband. Yeah, I have Forces of Nature. I have plenty of, I buy one small box, I look at the models, I assemble them, I maybe try painting one. Did I enjoy that? No. Okay, that's going to go back on the shelf, and maybe one day I'll revisit it, but that's not what I want to do now, and I'll buy another one and see if I like it better. And I mean, it's a hobby, right? Like, if you're not having fun with it, it means you need to do something else. So I don't know.
That's fair.
I think buying one mega army is not that much of a commitment. Sure, it is a decent amount of money, but if turns out you don't like whatever Northern Alliance and you bought a mega army, you'll find someone who will buy it from you, right? Like, just throw it back on eBay or wherever, like within your gaming group, and you'll sell it. And so
or even maybe don't buy a mega army if money's tight. Maybe buy a smaller box, a smaller commitment.
Yeah.
And just do exactly the same thing, but it's less of a commitment.
I mean, that's my strategy. Worked sort of okay for me so far. I guess everyone's different in that aspect. I mean, your approach is completely valid as well. It's just I couldn't do this myself. That's not how I operate. But I'm not saying my approach is better than yours. Absolutely not. So just figure out something to work.
I mean, no, that's not my approach. My approach is just to buy all the toys and then somehow make it work. That's
and somehow the magic
if you
happens.
can call that an approach, not just going, oh, give me all the models.
Yeah.
Super. And blimey, I'm conscious of the time. So, Clem, what do you think? So, probably about 4 paints, 4 colours. Would you say people should kind of get down?
Yeah, so 4 colors or as little as you can get away with is a good amount. Always do less than you think initially. I personally, these days, when I start a new project, will, as we explained already earlier today, prime black, some white primer from above to kind of highlight, give some light on the model, and then contrast or like transparent paints, because it's one layer and it's done. And so choose 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 colors, or maybe I think on many models I have like 4 contrast colors plus 1 metallic color, and that's plenty, right? And just do this and go to town with it. And maybe you will start with 3 colors plus metallic, and your model is almost done. Like you could play with it and never revisit it. Or maybe later you said, nah, you know what, maybe I'll also paint the boots. Or like you mentioned, maybe I will paint the teeth on the models and they will look cooler. And you just do that later. But don't do it from day one. That's.
Yeah. I would say as well, just one little tip is if you have the ability to leave your stuff out, to have a little hobby space, even if it's just like a little tiny table somewhere, that makes a huge difference. Because if you can just dip in and do 15 minutes of painting or hobby when you have the time, that all adds up really, really quick, right? And also, I think you really feel you feel connected to your project because it's kind of little and often. If you have to spend 20 minutes getting everything ready before you do any hobby and 20 minutes putting everything away again, unfortunately, you're not.
It will not happen.
Often going to do it,
I
right?
agree.
It's going to feel you're going to be. I've had a long day. I honestly can't be bothered. It's going to be very challenging.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other big supports to get something done is when you actually need it. And so what I would do is just organize a tournament, or sign up for a tournament, or sign up for a gaming day, or ask one of your friends, hey, let's play in 3 weeks or whatever. And then in 3 weeks you have a game coming up. And suddenly...
So you've got a deadline you have to be ready for.
Yeah, in a way. It's not just a deadline. I have those at work already. I don't need more of those. But I have something exciting to look forward to. And then I can think, okay, in 3 weeks I see that friends to play this game. Wouldn't it be better if I have slightly more paint on my models when I show up?
That's a nice way.
And so it's not a deadline. It's not a deadline. It's a good reason to get excited about, okay, I'm going to spend that evening, instead of fucking around my phone or watching a movie or something, maybe I'll listen to a podcast or some music, and I'll get, 10 of those guys done. And
thank you for listening to this podcast, dear listener. Thank you for staying with us for so long. You've almost made it to the end. Sorry, Clem.
By now it's 3 hordes of goblins that are done.
We've dropped the F-bomb.
Oh.
No worries. We've unticked the box. We are not family friendly anymore.
Yeah, that's it. That's life.
We lived the dream, but we just couldn't live up to it. Cool. No, I think that's a good tip. Again, we've talked about it before, but things don't have to be perfect. They just have to look good from 6 feet away, maybe 2 feet away.
Yep. I mean, it's cliche, but any paint is always better than no paint.
100%. 100%. And it's super cool, particularly in Kings of War, when we know it's a lot of work. When someone else has obviously made an effort. It doesn't have to be the best army in the world, but hey, that's great. You've made an effort. That's cool, right?
Yeah, and it's also not the end of the world. Like, once you do one army, you'll probably want to make a second one and a third one and so on. And so don't try to make it perfect from day one. Just get something through the door. And done is better than good in, I think, the vast majority of cases.
100%. 100%.
If you try to paint...
And at that point, you can just get playing the game and having fun.
Yeah, if you try to paint box art from day one, you will have a bad time, because you'll just compare yourself to professionals who have been doing this for 12, 15, 20 years, and you're just getting started. So obviously they're doing it better than you are. They probably also have more time than you do to get the model painted. So just don't do that. Just have a good time painting your models, and I think that's it.
100%.
And
cool.
the last twist, obviously, a good way to get started with Kings of War easily is do it in 10mm scale, because it's much less surface of model to paint. So if you're afraid by tons of 28mm models, look at half the size, and it is smaller, less paints, easier to store. Join us; it's fun.
Yeah, it is really fun. Yeah, fantastic. Cool. So we've got roughly 5 minutes left, Clem. I think have you got any final points to make on that? Getting into Kings of War?
Nope. I think that's it. Get a demo game. Just get started and have fun.
And come and join us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Fantastic. So, listener questions is our next segment. All we had was Steve Hildrew basically giving me a rough time about the sound quality of my mic last episode. I was just incompetent and too excited to get recording, and I didn't check things properly. So hopefully this month sounds better. So I'm going to quite confidently say I think I checked things, and I think it's all working as intended. So this month should sound a lot better. But
Hopefully
we're getting there, buddy. We're on episode 4. I think we're making one of the big differences is I'm making a real effort not to interrupt you so much, and I hope you felt the difference today.
Yeah. I think I was talking a lot.
Anyway, shut up, Clem. Anyway, sorry, buddy, just kidding.
Go.
But yeah, nice. So let's get up to next month and conclusions is the next section. So yes. If anyone wants to record us a theme song, please do and send it in to us. manticuniversepodcast@gmail.com. Clem finds it weird, but I'm going to keep asking.
Do it.
I actually very much enjoy our music, but it's not really. It doesn't really fit. I mean, it's a retro video game podcast soundtrack, isn't it? But it's cool. I like it. But I tell you what, Clem, have a look in the Free Music Archive. Type in the world, fantasy or sci-fi, and listen to how terrible the music is. Seriously, I made the right decision. I think I listened to about 30 horrible, ear-bleeding songs before I just went, I'll try a different tact. And I found that one and was like, right, that actually sounds nice to my ears, so we're going with that one.
You've seen my bass. I could maybe come up with something, but...
Oh, yeah.
I'll leave that open for listeners to give us something. Anyway, let's see.
I was playing Smoke Over Water.
Yep.
The only bass line I know how to play.
That's a good one.
Extremely easily, obviously. Cool. So, join us on our Facebook page, Mantic Universe Podcast. We've got a few people on there, but, it'd be lovely if people came and joined us. Will Clem, please post more pictures up on there, particularly about from Berlin.
Right.
Yep. And just to wrap up the show, if you're not aware, I'm sure if you listen to this, Countercharge is an amazing podcast. They specialise in Kings of War, but they've just literally the last couple of days had their first Firefight episode. It was really, really good, and they're going to be doing roughly one of those a month, so definitely check that out. That was excellent. There's also obviously the Deadzone podcast, and they've been lovely to us. They've been really, really helpful. And they're just the nicest people, and that's a great podcast. Clem mentioned earlier terrain, Gamemat.eu. I've ordered some Firefight terrain. When it arrives, I'll definitely post pictures up on the Facebook. It's amazing stuff. Like, seriously, it's super, super cool. And I'm moving very quickly through, I know. One YouTube channel I've found, which is excellent for Kings of War and for Firefight, is out of Australia. They're called the Creaky Gamers. And they've basically solved problems with Kings of War battle reports I didn't even know existed. So, Clem, check that out. Creaky Gamers on YouTube. They're brilliant, really entertaining, but very, very professionally made. And they've got the classic Aussie sense of humour. They're really funny guys. But honestly, you'll be really blown away by the quality. Now, we've run out of time to talk about it. Clem, we're working on a secret project, which I think is going to remain secret for another month. But I think actually I'm really excited by it, and I think it's really, really cool. And I hope you know what I'm referring to.
You want to keep it secret? I mean, we talked about it in this show. Like, why not just throw it out there and be done with it? And then we'll talk more about it.
Just a question of time. So we're working. We're working on just having somewhere that the community can submit their own custom scenarios for the different Mantic games, and then we were thinking maybe the community can vote on them, and say was this fun? Is this cool? And then we'll just have a repository for people to find fun custom scenarios. Maybe we'll split it between narrative and competitive. Who knows? I mean, we can do whatever we want. We have actually had Mantic say, yes, it's okay, you do this. But I'm just really excited. I think this is really cool. I think custom scenarios for all the Mantic games is a really exciting thing that I'm happy if we can kind of facilitate this.
I think it will bring something to the games. Scenarios that are in rule books are already excellent, but I'm sure we can come up with even more cool scenarios, and kind of in the support of what we've been discussing earlier, like creating cooler narratives for your games, newer situations and so on. Coming up with your own scenarios, I think, is a pretty good way to do this. And so what we want to do is work on it on our own, but also include you guys in this effort, and share those scenarios drafts, and refine them and share them, and build cool stuff together. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so Clem and I, we're going to try and come up with the tools to help us to kind of standardize this. It's going to be, it's mostly me doing this, so it's going to be, not the most professional thing in the world, but as long as it works, right, to get us started. And I think Clem and I will come up with some of our own scenarios just to get the ball rolling, and then we really will encourage everyone to try and send in, if you've got some ideas, maybe you've been playing custom scenarios for years. I just encourage everyone to get involved, because I think it's really exciting and gives the community something we just don't have currently, and I think it's in a space that we really want to improve on.
Absolutely.
Cool. Right, we're out of time, Clem. Anything else to say before